My son thought he was slick, sliding a strange black package under the dashboard of my old Ford truck while I was in the garage getting beer. He thought my old eyes were too cloudy to see through the crack in the door. He thought my mind was too slow to understand what a brick wrapped in thick black tape meant. I said nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't ask him why he wanted to send his own father to prison. I just waited. After he ran back inside, wiping his sweaty hands on his designer jeans, I quietly took the package out. It was heavy. It smelled like chemical death. I walked over to his leased Lexus parked in my driveway, used the spare key I kept from the time I fixed his transmission, and tucked that package snugly inside the compartment with his spare tire. I went back inside, handed him his beer, and watched him smile at me. It was the smile of a Judas. 23 minutes after they drove away, I sat on my porch and listened. The silence of the night was shattered by the wail of sirens. Blue and red lights painted the sky at the end of the block. I took a sip of my beer. The show was just beginning. Before I tell you how I destroyed my son's life to save my own, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. My name is Walter Robinson. I am 68 years old. If you saw me walking down the street here in Detroit, you would not look twice. You would see an old black man with grease permanently stained into his cuticles, wearing a faded Carhartt jacket and driving a 2004 Ford F-150 that sounds like a dying tractor. You would see a man who looks like he lives paycheck to paycheck. And that is exactly what I want you to see. That is what my son Darnell sees. To him, I am just a retired mechanic, a relic of a bygone era, a man who smells like motor oil and cheap coffee. He thinks my house, a modest two-bedroom bungalow on a lot that developers are drooling over, is the only asset I have. He is wrong. Darnell does not know about the $18 million in the trust fund. He does not know that Robinson Logistics, the company he applied to 3 times and got rejected from, belongs to me. He does not know that I own the parking lots where his friends park their luxury cars downtown. I built my empire in the shadows, fixing trucks by day and buying land by night. I kept it secret to teach him the value of hard work. I wanted him to build his own man, not stand on my shoulders. But looking at him now at 32 years old, I realize I failed. I did not raise a man. I raised a parasite. It was a Tuesday evening when the betrayal began. Darnell called me in the morning, his voice tight, too high-pitched. He said he wanted to come over for dinner. He said he wanted to bring Rebecca. Just hearing her name made my jaw clench. Rebecca is my daughter-in-law. She is 28, white, and treats the world like it is her personal servant. She met Darnell at a club, saw his leased Lexus, saw his fake Rolex, and thought she had caught a big fish. Now that they are drowning in debt, she looks at me not as a father-in-law, but as a stubborn obstacle between her and an inheritance. They arrived at 6 o'clock. I had made pot roast. It is a simple meal, but it is hearty. It fills the belly. Rebecca walked into my house like she was entering a contaminated zone. She was wearing white pants. Who wears white pants to a mechanic's house? She looked at the vinyl chair in my kitchen, the one with the duct tape on the corner, and pulled a packet of wet wipes from her purse. She scrubbed the seat for a full minute before sitting down. "It smells like oil in here, Walter," she said. "She never calls me Dad. She never calls me Mr. Robinson. Just Walter." It was not an observation. It was an accusation. I wiped my hands on a rag. "It is the smell of honest work, Rebecca," I said. "It paid for this roof." She rolled her eyes. She looked at Darnell. Darnell did not look at me. He was pacing the kitchen. He was wearing a suit that was too tight, a shiny gray thing that cost more than my first car. He was sweating. It was 65 degrees in my house because I don't believe in wasting heat, but Darnell had sweat beading on his forehead. He kept checking his phone. He kept looking out the window toward the street. "Sit down, son," I said. "The food is getting cold." "I can't eat pop," he said. "My stomach is messing with me. I need a beer." "Do you have any beer?" I pointed to the garage door. "You know where the fridge is." He nodded too quickly. He rushed toward the garage. I watched him go. A father knows his son's walk. I know Darnell's walk when he is proud. I know his walk when he is lazy. But this walk was different. This was the walk of a man who was being hunted. Rebecca sighed loudly. She poked at the pot roast with her fork. "So, Walter," she said, not making eye contact, "have you thought about what we discussed last week about the assisted living facility? It is really nice. They have a pool." I cut my meat. I am fine right here, Rebecca. She put the fork down. The metal clattered against the plate. You are being selfish. This house is rotting. The neighborhood is changing. Darnell is stressed out of his mind worrying about you. If you sold this place, you could live in comfort. And you could help Darnell. He is going through a rough patch. A rough patch. That is what she called it. I knew the truth. My contacts in the city run deep. I knew Darnell owed $50,000 to a bookie on the west side. I knew he was 3 months behind on the lease for that Lexus. I knew they were drowning. But I wanted him to ask me. I wanted him to be a man and say, "Pop, I messed up." Instead, he sent his wife to bully me out of my home. I am not selling, I said. My voice was low. My voice was final. Rebecca narrowed her eyes. You are a stubborn old man. You are going to die in this house alone and nobody will find you for weeks. I ignored her. I stood up. I am going to get a beer too, I said. I walked to the garage. I moved quietly. Years of hunting and years of fixing engines taught me how to move without making a sound. I did not open the door all the way. I cracked it just an inch. The garage was dim, lit only by a single yellow bulb. My truck, my faithful Ford, was parked in the center. Darnell was not at the fridge. He was at the truck. The driver's side door was open. He was on his knees. He was reaching under the dashboard, fumbling with something. I squinted. In his hand, he held a package. It was wrapped in thick black electrical tape about the size of a brick. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs, not with fear, but with a sudden crushing grief. I knew what a package like that meant. I grew up in the city. I saw what the 80s did to us. I saw what the 90s did. That was not money. That was not a gift. That was weight. That was drugs. He was taping it under my steering column. He was grunting, trying to secure it. I watched his hands. They were shaking. He checked over his shoulder, looking at the door where I stood hidden in the shadows. I held my breath. He turned back to the work. He finished, slammed the truck door, and leaned against it, wiping his face. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. Then he walked toward the fridge, grabbed a beer, and headed back to the house. I stepped back into the shadows of the hallway. I let him pass. He didn't see me. He was too consumed by his own guilt or maybe his own fear. When the kitchen door closed behind him, I entered the garage. I walked to my truck. I didn't feel anger yet. I felt cold. I felt a surgical precision taking over my mind. I opened the truck door. I reached under the dashboard. I felt the cold tape. I ripped it loose. It fell into my hand. It was heavy, dense. I brought it to my nose. Even through the layers of tape, I could smell the faint, sharp chemical tang. Fentanyl, or maybe pure crystal. Enough to put a man away for 20 years. Enough to put a black man in Detroit away for life. I understood the plan instantly. It was simple. It was brutal. They would call in an anonymous tip. The police would stop me. They would find the drugs. I would go to jail. Darnell would get power of attorney. He would sell my house. He would pay his debts. He would let his father rot in a cell to save his own skin. I stood there in the dim light, holding my son's betrayal in my hands. It weighed about 1 kilo. I looked at the Lexus parked in the driveway. It was shiny, silver, a vanity plate that read D-REAL. It was unlocked. Darnell was arrogant. He never locked his car in my driveway because he thought my neighborhood was trash, but he thought he was untouchable. I walked over to the Lexus. I still had the spare key in my pocket from when I replaced his alternator 6 months ago. He never asked for it back. I didn't need it. The trunk was unlocked. I popped it open. It was clean, empty. I lifted the carpet lining the floor. There was the spare tire. There was a perfect little hollow space right next to the jack. I placed the black brick into the hollow. I tucked the carpet back down. I smoothed it out. I wiped the trunk lid with the rag from my back pocket to clear my prints. I closed the trunk. I took a deep breath. I grabbed a beer from the fridge. I walked back into the kitchen. Darnell was sitting at the table drinking his beer too fast. Rebecca was scrolling on her phone. "Got you one," I said, setting my beer on the table. Darnell jumped. "Thanks, Pop." "You okay?" I asked. I looked him dead in the eye. I wanted to see it. I wanted to see the soul of the boy I raised, but there was nothing there, just fear and greed. "I'm fine," he said. "Just work stress. You know how it is." I nodded. "I know how it is. Work is hard. Shortcuts are dangerous." He flinched. "What do you mean?" I sat down. I took a bite of the cold pot roast. "I mean, nothing in life is free, Darnell. You have to pay the price for everything." Rebecca scoffed. "God, here comes the lecture. Can we just eat? We ate in silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Tick, tick, tick. It sounded like a countdown. Darnell ate 3 bites. He pushed his plate away. We gotta go, he said abruptly. He stood up. I have a meeting early tomorrow. But we just started eating, I said. I am not hungry, Rebecca snapped. She stood up too. Let's go, Darnell. This place is depressing. Darnell looked at me. For a second, just a second, I saw hesitation. I saw his lip tremble. He looked at the garage door. He looked at me. Pop, Yeah, I asked. I gave him the opening. Confess. Tell me right now. Tell me you put a brick of poison in my truck and I will fix it. I will make the problem go away. I am your father. I can fix anything. Just tell me. He swallowed. He looked at Rebecca. She glared at him. Nothing. Pop, take care of yourself. Drive safe, okay? Make sure you drive safe. Drive safe. That was the signal. He was reinforcing the trap. I will, son, I said. I always do. They walked out the front door. I didn't walk them to the car. I stayed at the table. I heard the Lexus start up. I heard the engine revvern. I heard the tires crunch on the gravel. They were gone. I stood up. I walked to the front porch. I sat on my rocking chair. The night air was cool. I opened my beer. I took a long drink. I looked at my watch. 7:45. I knew Darnell. He was impatient. He would not wait until tomorrow. He would make the call as soon as he was out of sight. He probably had the tip line on speed dial. He probably told them I was moving product tonight. He probably told them I was armed. I waited. A neighbor's dog barked. A car drove by with bass rattling the windows. 7:55. My phone remained silent. I did not call anyone. I did not call my lawyer yet. I just watched the end of the street. 8:08. There it was. First the sound. A siren, but not a distant city siren. This was close. It was a yelp, a whoop-whoop sound of a cruiser hitting the gas. Then the lights, blue and red flashing against the trees at the corner of Michigan Avenue and 3rd. That was the route to the highway. That was the route Darnell took home. I saw the SUV cruiser speed past the end of my block, then another, then a K9 unit. They were swarming. I took another sip of beer. I closed my eyes. I could imagine the scene. The lights in the rearview mirror. Darnell pulling over annoyed but secretly smiling, thinking they were heading for my house. The confusion when they ordered him out of the car, the terror when the dog stopped at his trunk. My phone rang. It was not Darnell. It was unknown. I let it ring. It rang again. I answered. Hello, Mr. Robinson. This is Officer Miller from the 4th Precinct. Yes, we have your son Darnell Robinson in custody. We need you to come down to the scene. He is hysterical, sir. He keeps screaming about your truck. I leaned back in my chair. The wood creaked. My truck? I asked, keeping my voice steady, the voice of a confused old man. What is wrong with my truck? He claims, look, it is better if you come down here. He is in a lot of trouble, Mr. Robinson. We found a significant amount of narcotics in his vehicle. I let out a long, slow breath. In his vehicle? Officer, that is impossible. Darnell is a businessman. He sells condos. He was screaming that you framed him, Mr. Robinson. I stayed silent for 5 seconds. I let the weight of that accusation hang in the air. Officer, I said, my voice cracking just enough. I am 68 years old. I change oil for a living. I don't know what my son is involved in, but I will be right there. I hung up the phone. I finished my beer. I stood up and walked to my bedroom to get my cane. I don't really need the cane, but tonight I needed to look frail. I needed to look like a victim. I walked out to my truck. I checked under the seat. Nothing there. Just dust and a lost penny. I smiled. I started the engine. The old Ford roared to life. I backed out of the driveway. As I drove toward the flashing lights, I felt a hardness settle over my heart. Darnell had made his choice. He tried to bury me. Now he was going to learn that you do not dig a grave for a man who owns the shovel, the dirt, and the land you are standing on. I turned the corner. The scene was chaotic. Police cars blocked the road. Darnell was on the curb, handcuffed, screaming. Rebecca was crying, her mascara running down her face, yelling at a female officer. I pulled up slow. I rolled down my window. Darnell saw me. His eyes went wide. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Daddy," he screamed. "Daddy, tell them it was in your truck." I opened my door. I stepped out, leaning heavy on my cane. I looked at the officer. I looked at my son. I looked at him with the eyes of a stranger. "Officer," I said, "I don't know what this boy is talking about. What did you find?" The officer looked at Darnell with pity, then at me with respect. "We found a kilo of meth in the trunk, sir." I looked at Darnell. He stopped screaming. He realized then. He realized the package moved. He realized I knew. I shook my head slowly. "Lord have mercy," I whispered. "My poor boy. What have you done?" Darnell's face twisted. "You old bastard," he shrieked. "You switched it." The officer shoved Darnell toward the cruiser. "Watch your mouth, son. You are talking to your father." I watched them shove him into the back seat. I watched Rebecca get handcuffed. I stood there, the grieving father, the confused old mechanic. But inside, I was already planning the next move. This was just the first domino. Darnell was in jail, but the debt was still out there. The sharks he owed money to were still swimming, and now that their mule was in a cage, they would come looking for the next best thing. They would come looking for me, and I would be ready. I walked toward the flashing lights at the end of the block. My cane tapped against the concrete sidewalk with a steady rhythm. Tap, step, tap, step. It was the only steady sound in a night that had suddenly turned into chaos. The air was thick with the smell of burning flares and exhaust fumes. The blue and red strobe lights from the police cruisers bounced off the windows of the neighbors' houses, waking up the entire street. People were stepping out onto their porches, wrapping robes around themselves, staring at the spectacle. I kept my head down. I kept my pace slow. I was just a worried father coming to see what trouble his boy had gotten into. When I got close enough to see clearly, the scene was worse than I had imagined. It was perfect. 3 police cruisers had boxed in the silver Lexus. The doors of Darnell's car were thrown open. Darnell was face down on the asphalt. His expensive gray suit was grinding into the oil-stained road. His hands were behind his back, and a large officer was kneeling on his shoulder, clicking the handcuffs into place. Rebecca was screaming. She was standing by the passenger door, her hands already cuffed behind her back. A female officer was holding her arm. Rebecca was yelling about her rights, about how her father was a lawyer, about how this was a mistake. Her mascara was running down her cheeks in black streaks. She looked at the neighbors watching from their lawns and screamed at them to stop looking. She had always wanted to be the center of attention. Now she was. I stopped about 20 feet away. I leaned heavily on my cane, hunched my shoulders, and put a look of absolute confusion on my face. I watched as a K9 unit handler led a German Shepherd toward the car. The dog was not interested in Darnell. The dog was not interested in Rebecca. It went straight to the rear of the Lexus. The dog started barking. It scratched at the trunk. It whined and circled its claws, scraping against the pristine silver paint. Darnell lifted his head from the pavement. I saw his face. It was scraped and bleeding from where he had hit the ground. He looked at the dog. His eyes went wide. He knew. In that split second, he knew exactly what was happening. "Open the trunk," the sergeant yelled. Another officer popped the trunk latch. The lid swung open. The dog went berserk. The handler had to pull him back. The officer reached inside. He lifted the carpet. He pulled out the black brick. It looked even bigger under the harsh glare of the police spotlights. Darnell lost his mind. He started thrashing on the ground. He tried to roll over. He screamed so loud his voice cracked. "No, no. That is not mine. That is not supposed to be there." The officer holding the brick turned to look at him. "Oh yeah, you going to tell me this kilo of meth just magically appeared in your spare tire? Well," Darnell screamed the words that would seal his fate, the words that I had been praying he would say, the words that were being recorded in high definition by the body camera on the officer's chest. "It was in the truck." He screamed it. "It was in the truck. I put it in the truck. I put it under the dashboard of the old man's truck. It is not supposed to be in my car. You are framing me." The officer stopped. The sergeant looked down at Darnell. He looked at the brick in the evidence bag. Then he looked back at Darnell. "You put it in whose truck, son?" the sergeant asked. His voice was calm, dangerous. "My father's truck." Darnell was sobbing now. He was hyperventilating. "The Ford. The F-150. I put it there. Someone moved it. It was him. He moved it." He was confessing. In his panic to prove he was innocent of possession, he was confessing to conspiracy. He was confessing to planting evidence. He was confessing that he had handled the drugs. He was digging a hole so deep he would never see the sun again. I decided it was time to make my entrance. I shuffled forward. I let my cane scrape loudly against the ground. "Excuse me, officers," I called out. My voice trembled. I made sure to sound weak. I made sure to sound like a man who had spent his life changing oil and following rules. "What is going on here?" "That is my boy. Is that my son?" The sergeant turned to look at me. He saw an old black man in a faded jacket leaning on a cane, looking terrified. He saw a harmless grandfather. He held up a hand to stop me. "Stay back, sir," the sergeant said. "This is a crime scene." "But that is Darnell," I said. I pointed a shaking finger at my son lying in the street. "He just left my house. We just had dinner. He is a good boy. He sells real estate. He drives a nice car. He does not do drugs." Darnell stopped thrashing. He froze. He lifted his head and looked at me. Our eyes met. Time seemed to stop. The sirens faded into the background. The screaming of Rebecca faded away. It was just me and him, father and son. He looked at my face. He saw the concern in my eyebrows. He saw the fear in my posture. But he looked deeper. He looked into my eyes. And there, deep in the dark brown of my irises, he saw the truth. He saw the steel. He saw the man who had raised him. He saw the mechanic who knew every bolt and every screw of that Ford truck. He realized then. He realized I had seen him in the garage. He realized I had taken the package. He realized I had used the spare key. He realized I had stood there and watched him drive away, knowing exactly what was going to happen. He opened his mouth to speak. He wanted to scream at me. He wanted to tell the police that his father was a mastermind, that his father was rich, that his father had set him up. But he couldn't. Because if he said I moved the drugs, he had to admit he brought the drugs in the first place. If he said I was rich, nobody would believe him looking at my clothes and my house. If he accused me now, he would just look like a desperate junkie blaming a helpless old man. He closed his mouth. He lowered his head to the pavement. He started to cry. Not the fake tears he used to get money from me. Real tears. Tears of defeat. "Sir," the sergeant said to me walking over, "I need you to step back. Your son is in a lot of trouble. We found a large quantity of narcotics in his vehicle." I put my hand over my mouth. I gasped. "Narcotics. Numbnut, Darnell. He is a businessman. He wears suits. He admitted to placing it in your vehicle, sir," the sergeant said. "He claims he put it in your truck." I looked at the sergeant. I looked confused. "My truck? Why would he put it in my truck? I just used that truck to haul scrap metal. Why would my son want to hurt me?" The sergeant sighed. He put a hand on my shoulder. "I don't know, sir. Junkies say crazy things when they get caught. Maybe he was trying to hide it. Maybe he was trying to use you as a mule. But we found it in his car. He is going downtown." Rebecca was still screaming. She had seen me too. "You old leech, this is your fault. You did this. You hated us because we are successful. You planted this." The female officer pushed Rebecca into the back of a cruiser. "Watch your head, ma'am," she said, not gently. I looked at Darnell one last time as they hauled him up. His suit was ruined. His knees were bleeding. He wouldn't look at me anymore. He was broken. He was a man who had tried to play a game he didn't understand against a player he didn't respect. They shoved him into the back of the second cruiser. He slumped against the window. He looked small. I turned to the sergeant. "Where are you taking him?" I asked. "I need to call a lawyer. I need to help him." "He is going to the central booking," the sergeant said. "You can call a lawyer, sir, but with the amount we found and with his admission on tape, he isn't going anywhere for a long time. You should go home, sir. Get some rest. This is going to be a long night." I nodded. "Thank you, officer. Please, please treat him well. He is my only son." I watched them drive away. The tow truck arrived to take the Lexus. I watched them hook it up. I watched them drag Darnell's pride and joy up the ramp. I stood there until the street was empty again, until the neighbors went back inside whispering and gossiping. I turned around and walked back to my house. Tap, step, tap, step. When I got inside, I locked the door. I put the cane back in the umbrella stand. I stood up straight. I rolled my shoulders to get the tension out. I walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge. I took out another beer. I sat at the table in the dark kitchen. I didn't turn on the light. I took a sip of the cold beer. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang twice. Strickland, a voice answered. It was rough like gravel in a blender. Strickland was an old friend. We served together. He was the best criminal defense attorney in the state, but he retired 5 years ago to fish and drink whiskey. "Hello, Strick," I said. "Walter. Is that you? You calling me this late? Did your truck break down?" "No, Strick. The truck is fine. Then what do you need? You haven't called since Esther passed. I need a lawyer, Strick. Not for me, for my son, Darnell. The one who thinks he is better than you. What did he do? Speeding ticket? No, I said. I took a breath. He tried to frame me for possession with intent to distribute. He put a kilo of something under my dash. I moved it to his trunk. The cops just took him. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then a low chuckle started. It grew into a laugh. A deep belly laugh. You switched it, Strickland asked. I switched it. And he got caught with it. He got caught. And he screamed on body cam that he put it in my truck. Strickland whistled. That is cold. Walter, that is ice cold. So why are you calling me? You want me to defend him? No, I said. I don't want you to get him out. I want you to represent me. I want you to make sure that when he tries to blame me, when he tries to say I am senile or that I am the kingpin, you are there to crush him. And I need you to find out who he owes money to, because a boy like Darnell doesn't move a brick like that unless he has a gun to his head. I see, Strickland said. The game is on. The game is on, I repeated. I'll meet you at the precinct in the morning, Walter. Get some sleep. You are going to need it. I hung up. I finished my beer. I looked around my empty house. It was quiet. It was peaceful. But I knew the storm was just starting. Darnell was in a cage, but the people who gave him that package were still free. And they were going to want their money. Or they were going to want blood. I wasn't afraid. I had faced worse than street thugs. I had faced the heartbreak of my own flesh and blood trying to bury me. Compared to that, a couple of gangsters were nothing. I went to the basement. I unlocked the heavy steel cabinet in the corner. I took out my old service pistol. I checked the magazine. Full. I racked the slide. I put it on the nightstand next to my bed. I slept like a baby. The sun was just starting to bleed through the blinds of my kitchen window. It was a gray industrial light, the kind you only get in Detroit when the factories are waking up. I sat at my laminate table with a mug of black coffee. The steam rose up and disappeared into the stale air of the house. I had not slept much. I'd spent the night listening to the house settle, listening to the pipes groan, and thinking about the man I saw in the back of that police cruiser. That man was not the boy I taught to fish. That man was a stranger who wore my son's face. The phone rang at 7:15. It was not the cell phone. It was the landline on the wall. Only bill collectors and scammers call the landline these days. And people in jail. I let it ring 3 times. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to wonder if the old man was still asleep or maybe dead from the shock of the night before. I took a slow sip of coffee. It was bitter. Good. I picked up the receiver on the 4th ring. Hello. A robotic voice filled my ear. This is a prepaid call from an inmate at the Wayne County Detention Facility. To accept this call, press 1. I pressed 1. The line clicked. There was a hiss of static, the sound of 1,000 other desperate conversations happening in the background. Pop! Pop, are you there? Darnell's voice was ragged. He sounded like he had been screaming for hours. There was no apology in his tone. There was no shame. There was only the frantic, entitled demand of a child who broke a window and expected his father to pay for the glass. I am here, son, I said. My voice was low and gravelly. I made sure to sound tired. I made sure to sound broken. You have to get me out of here, Pop. You have to come down here right now. This place is a hellhole. It smells like urine and bleach. They took my suit. They gave me this orange rag to wear. You have to fix this. I leaned against the counter. I looked at the grease stains on the wall near the stove. Fix this, I asked. How am I supposed to fix a federal drug charge, Darnell? The police captain said you had enough product to supply the whole neighborhood. It is a setup, Darnell shouted. The audio clipped and distorted. Listen to me, I did not do anything. The cops saw a successful black man in a Lexus and they decided to ruin me. They planted it. You know how they are. They hate seeing us rise up. They put that brick in my trunk when I wasn't looking. I closed my eyes. He was playing the race card. He was using our history, our struggle as a shield for his own greed. It made me sick. I knew exactly how that brick got in his trunk. I put it there. But he put it in my truck first. He was lying to me, and he expected me to swallow it whole because he thought I was a simpleton. They planted it, I repeated slowly. Just like that. Yes. Just like that. I am innocent, Pop. But they set the bail crazy high. The judge is in on it too. They want to keep me down. They want to break me. You cannot let them win." "How much, Darnell?" "500,000. I almost dropped the receiver. $500,000. That was not a standard bail. That was a message. That meant they knew who he was working for, or they knew he was a flight risk. Or maybe Strickland had already made a few calls to the judge to make sure my son stayed put. $500,000, I whispered. "Darnell, I have $2,000 in my checking account. I have a jar of quarters in the bedroom. Where do you think I'm going to get $500,000? "Sell the house," Darnell said. He said it so fast. He said it so easily. It was like he had the words loaded in the chamber ready to fire. What I asked. "Sell the house, Pop. It is the only way. I talked to a bondsman already. He said if you put the deed up as collateral, we can get a loan. The land is worth money. The developers have been sniffing around for years. You told me yourself they offered you cash last year." I gripped the phone cord. My knuckles turned white. This was it. This was the end game. He didn't care about my home. He didn't care that his mother died in the back bedroom. He didn't care that I had built the porch with my own hands. He just saw a pile of cash that he could burn to save himself. "Son, this is my home," I said. "Where would I go?" "Who cares where you go?" he snapped. "You can go to a motel. You can come live with us when I get out. Rebecca loves you. We will take care of you. But you have to sign the papers today. The bondsman is sending a guy over with the forms. You just have to sign. Rebecca loves me." That was the biggest lie yet. Rebecca would poison my soup if she thought she could get away with it. "I cannot do that, Darnell," I said. "I cannot sign away my roof. It is all I have left of your mother." "Don't you bring Mom into this," he yelled. "If Mom was here, she would help me. She wouldn't let her son rot in a cage with animals. She loved me. You are just a selfish old man holding onto a pile of wood and bricks." I let him scream. I let him pour his poison into my ear. I needed him to keep talking. I needed him to slip. I needed a name. "Why is the bail so high, Darnell?" I asked calmly. "If they planted it, why is it so high? You have no priors." "Because of who they think it belongs to," he hissed. He lowered his voice. He whispered into the phone, and I could hear the terror leaking through. "They think I am moving weight for Big T." Big T. The name hung in the air like smoke. I knew that name. Everyone on the east side knew that name. Tyrone Washington. Big T. He ran the sports book. He ran the numbers. And lately he had been moving into fentanyl. He was not a man you owed money to. He was a man who collected debts with a blowtorch and a pair of pliers. Big T. I asked, feigning ignorance. "Who is Big T? Is he a friend of yours?" "No, he is not a friend," Darnell said, his voice trembling. "He is... Look, Pop, I owe some people some money." "Okay, I made some bad bets. The market turned on me. I borrowed some cash to float the business." "You borrowed from a loan shark," I said. "It was temporary," Darnell insisted. "I was going to pay it back. I had a deal lined up, but it fell through. And Big T, he does not like to wait. That package, it was a favor. It was supposed to clear the debt. A favor. He called transporting a kilo of death a favor. So you admitted," I said. "It wasn't the cops, it was you. You had it." Silence. Heavy, guilty silence. "I had to do it, Pop," he whispered. "You don't understand. These guys, they came to the condo. They scared Rebecca. They told me if I didn't move this package, they were going to hurt her. They were going to hurt me. I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice," I said. "You could have come to me." "Come to you," he scoffed. "What were you going to do? Fix their transmission? You are a mechanic, Pop. You are a nobody. You have no money. You have no power. You are just an old man waiting to die. You couldn't help me. The only thing you are good for is that house." There it was, the truth. Naked and ugly. He didn't respect me. He didn't love me. He saw me as a resource, an asset to be liquidated. "So you tried to put it in my truck," I said. "You tried to make me the mule. You thought if the cops caught me, I would go to jail and you would be free. I didn't think you would get caught," he lied. "You drive like a grandpa. Nobody pulls you over. It was safe." "Safe for you," I said. "Not for me." "Pop, stop the lecture," he shouted. "I don't have time. Big T knows I got picked up. If I stay in here, his guys inside are going to get to me. I am a dead man if I stay in this cell." Do you understand? They will kill me. You have to sell the house. You have to wire the money. Today. I looked around my kitchen. I looked at the sunbeam hitting the table. I thought about the $18 million sitting in my offshore accounts. I could write a check for his bail right now. I could pay off Big T. I could buy Darnell a new life in another state. But if I did that, he would never learn. He would never be a man. He would just be a richer parasite, and he would hate me even more for hiding the truth. I cleared my throat. I made my voice shake. I made it sound weak and frail. Darnell, I said, I checked my balance this morning. I have $2,114. That is it. Transfer it, he said. It is a start. And call the realtor. I called the realtor last month, son. I lied. Just to see. She told me the foundation is cracked. The roof needs to be replaced. She said nobody would buy this house as it is. It would sit on the market for months. He was silent. I could hear him breathing hard. You are lying, he spat. I am not lying, I said. I am old Darnell. I am tired. I don't have $500,000, and even if I did, I don't think I would give it to you. Not for this. Not to clean up a mess you made by trying to frame your own father. You useless old bastard, he screamed. The sound distorted in my ear. You selfish, hoarding old prick. I hope you die in that house. I hope you have a heart attack and rot in that kitchen. Is that all, Darnell? I asked. If I get killed in here, it is on you, he yelled. My blood is on your hands. Tell Rebecca to call her father. Tell her to get the money. You are dead to me. Do you hear me? You are dead. The line clicked. Then the dial tone. A long, steady hum. I hung up the phone gently. I did not slam it. I placed it back in the cradle. I stood there for a moment listening to the silence of the house. He had said the words. He had wished me dead. He had confirmed the debt. He had confirmed Big T. I was not sad. Sadness is a luxury for people who have options. I didn't have options. I had a mission. I picked up my cell phone. I dialed Strickland. He answered on the first ring. Did he call? Strickland asked. He called, I said. And he owes Big T. Tyrone Washington. Strickland whistled. That is heavy, Walter. Big T doesn't play. Did Darnell ask for bail? He asked for the house. And I told him it was worthless. Good, Strickland said. Now listen to me. Big T is going to find out Darnell is locked up. He is going to know his package is in evidence. He is going to look for someone to pay that debt. Since Darnell is inside, he is going to look at his next of kin. He is going to come for Rebecca, I said. Her too. But she is loud. She attracts attention. You are quiet. You are the father. Big T operates on old school rules. The father pays the son's debts. You need to be ready, Walter. I am ready, I said. There is one more thing, Strickland said. I pulled Darnell's file. The arraignment is tomorrow. Rebecca made bail. Her daddy wired the money. She is out. She is out, I repeated. She just walked out the door 10 minutes ago. And Walter, she listed your address as her residence on the release forms. My hand tightened on the phone. My address. She is coming to you, Walter. She is coming for the money she thinks you have hidden under the mattress. She is coming to tear that house apart. Let her come, I said. Walter, don't do anything stupid. She is your daughter-in-law. She is a trespasser, I said, and I have a welcome gift for her. I hung up. I walked to the living room. I looked at the picture of Esther on the mantel. I touched the glass. I am sorry, honey, I whispered, but I have to clean house. I went to the hallway closet. I pulled out the small wireless cameras I had bought months ago when I first suspected Darnell was stealing my tools. I never installed them because I didn't want to know the truth back then. I wanted to stay blind. Now I wanted to see everything. I spent the next hour placing them. One in the living room hidden in the bookshelf, one in the kitchen on top of the fridge, one in my bedroom pointing at the closet where I kept the safe, one in the garage. I synced them to my phone. The picture was crisp, HD quality. I sat down in my armchair. I put my cane across my lap. I waited. I knew Rebecca. She was impulsive. She was greedy. She wouldn't go to her parents' house. She wouldn't go to the condo. She would come here. She thought I was a senile old man hiding a fortune in coffee cans. She thought she could bully me. She thought she could scare me. She was about to find out that the only thing scary in this house was the man sitting in the chair. I heard a car pull up outside. A door slammed. Fast, angry footsteps on the pavement. She didn't knock. She had a key. Darnell had given it to her. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Rebecca stood there. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup was smeared. She was wearing the same clothes from the night before, wrinkled and stained. She looked like a banshee. She saw me sitting there. Her eyes narrowed. "Where is it, Walter?" she screamed. I didn't move. "Where is what, Rebecca?" "The money," she shrieked, stepping into the house and kicking the door shut behind her. "The money Esther left. Darnell told me. He told me she had a life insurance policy. He said you hid it. Give it to me. I need to pay a lawyer." She was lying, or Darnell had lied to her. Esther's policy paid for her funeral and this chair. That was it. But Rebecca didn't care about truth. She smelled desperation and she wanted to feed. I looked her up and down. I looked at her with zero emotion. "Get out of my house, Rebecca." She laughed. It was a manic, broken sound. "Make me old man." She threw her purse on the floor. She marched toward the kitchen. "I am going to find it," she yelled. "I am going to tear this dump apart brick by brick until I find every cent you are hiding." I watched her go. I picked up my phone. I opened the camera app. I pressed record. "Go ahead," I whispered to the empty room. "Dig your grave. I have plenty of dirt." She did not knock. She did not ask permission. The front door flew open with such violence that the handle punched a hole in the plaster of the hallway wall. I was sitting in my recliner, the brown leather one that is molded to the shape of my back over the last 15 years. My old dog Roscoe was curled up at my feet. He is a blue tick coonhound, mostly blind and deaf, but he lifted his heavy head and let out a low, rumbling growl. I placed my hand on his head. I stroked his velvet ears. "Hush now, Roscoe," I whispered. "Let the storm come in." And the storm came in, wearing designer heels and a face twisted by panic and rage. Rebecca stood in my hallway. She looked like a woman who had been dragged through a hedge backward. Her hair was matted. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had been in a holding cell for 18 hours before Darnell took the fall. He claimed the drugs were his alone. He claimed she knew nothing. He played the martyr so his princess could go free. And the first thing his princess did was come here to destroy his father. She marched into the living room. She did not look at me as a person. She looked at me as a vault that refused to open. "Where is it, Walter?" she screamed. Her voice was shrill. It cut through the quiet dust of my house. "Darnell said you have it. He said Esther left a stash. He said you have cash hidden in this dump." I looked at her calmly. I kept my hand on Roscoe's neck, feeling the vibration of his growl. "There is no money, Rebecca," I said. My voice was steady, low. I wanted her to hear the truth, even though I knew she would not believe it. "Esther left me this house and her love. That is all." "Liar," she shrieked. She threw her purse onto the floor. It hit with a heavy thud. "You are a lying, hoarding old miser. Darnell is sitting in a cage right now. He is looking at 20 years, Walter. 20 years. And you are sitting here petting a dog." She spun around and marched into the kitchen. I heard the sound of drawers being ripped out. Crash. The silverware drawer hit the linoleum. Forks and knives skittered across the floor like metal insects. She was looking for the mythical coffee can full of cash. She was looking for the hollowed-out book. She was looking for the salvation that did not exist. I did not get up. I did not yell. I watched the live feed on my phone screen resting on my lap. The camera on top of the fridge gave me a perfect view. I saw her rip the cabinet doors open. I saw her sweep my mugs off the shelf. My world's greatest dad mug, given to me by a 10-year-old Darnell, shattered into ceramic shards. She didn't even blink. She opened the freezer and started throwing frozen vegetables onto the floor. Bags of peas. Packages of chicken. She was tearing the heart out of my home. She came back into the living room breathing hard. Her chest was heaving. She had flour on her black blouse. "It is not in there," she hissed. "Where is the safe? Is it in the bedroom?" I stared at her. I looked at the woman my son had chosen. I looked at the greed that had consumed him. "You are trespassing, Rebecca," I said. "You are destroying my property." She laughed. It was a jagged, ugly sound. "Property? This isn't property. This is a landfill. This is a shack. You think I care about your garbage? I need $50,000 for a lawyer retainer, Walter. I need bail money, and you are going to give it to me." She marched down the hall to my bedroom. I heard the mattress being flipped. I heard the closet door slam against the wall. I heard the sound of my clothes being ripped from their hangers. My Sunday suits, my work shirts. She was violating the only private space I had left. Roscoe tried to get up. His hackles were raised. He knew something was wrong. He knew an intruder was hurting his pack. I held him down gently. "Stay, Roscoe," I whispered. "Let her dig." She came back out a minute later. She was holding a shoebox. It was the box where I kept Esther's old letters and a few savings bonds worth maybe $500. "Is this it?" she screamed, shaking the box. "This is what you have. A couple of pieces of paper. This won't even buy Darnell a decent meal in the commissary." She threw the box at me. It hit my chest and spilled open. Letters from 1978 fluttered to the floor. Pictures of Darnell as a baby scattered on the rug. "You are useless," she spat. She walked closer to me. She loomed over my chair. "You are a useless, pathetic old man. Darnell is in jail because of you. Do you know that? If you weren't so poor, if you weren't such a failure, he wouldn't have had to work for those people. He wouldn't have had to move drugs to pay bills. He did it because he didn't have a father who could provide." The words hit me. They were meant to hurt. They were meant to cut deep into my pride. But they didn't cut. They just clarified. They showed me exactly how she saw the world. In her eyes, poverty was a sin. In her eyes, my refusal to hand over money I didn't have was the crime, not the kilo of meth in the trunk. "He is a grown man, Rebecca," I said. "He made his choices." She screamed in frustration. She looked around for something else to break. Her eyes landed on the mantel above the fake fireplace. There was a picture there. It was framed in silver. It was my favorite picture of Esther. She was standing in the garden wearing her yellow Sunday hat, smiling at the camera like she knew a secret joke. It was the last picture I took of her before the cancer took her strength. No, I thought. Don't do it. Rebecca walked over to the mantel. She picked up the frame. She looked at Esther's smiling face. "She blames you too," Rebecca whispered. "She knows you are letting her son rot." She lifted the frame high above her head. "Rebecca, don't," I said. It was the first time I had raised my voice. She looked at me. She smiled. A cruel, twisted smile. "Oops," she said. She smashed the frame onto the brick hearth. The glass exploded. The silver frame bent. The picture of my Esther lay face down in the shards. Silence filled the room. The only sound was Roscoe's heavy breathing and the ringing in my ears. I looked at the broken glass. I looked at the woman standing there panting, challenging me to do something, challenging me to hit her, challenging me to give her a reason to call the police and say the angry black man attacked her. I felt a coldness spread through my veins. It was absolute zero. I reached down and patted Roscoe's head. I kept my hand moving in a slow, rhythmic motion. "Are you done?" I asked. She blinked. She expected me to rage. She expected me to cry. She didn't know what to do with the ice. "I asked you if you are done," I repeated. She took a step back. She looked at the destruction she had caused. The overturned furniture, the food on the kitchen floor, the shattered glass. You are a monster," she whispered. "You don't even care. Your wife's picture is broken and you don't even care." "I care," I said. "But glass is just glass. Paper is just paper. You can break things, Rebecca, but you cannot break me. And you cannot find money that isn't here." She stared at me for a long moment. She realized then that violence wasn't working. She realized that she could burn the house down and I would probably just sit in the yard and watch it burn. She let out a frustrated scream, a guttural sound of pure impotence. She kicked the coffee table, hurting her toe and her expensive heels. "I am coming back," she threatened. "I am coming back with a lawyer. I am coming back with a doctor." "You are senile, Walter. You can't take care of yourself. Look at this house. It is a disaster. No sane person lives like this." She gestured to the mess she had just created. She was already rewriting the narrative. In her mind, the mess wasn't her fault. It was evidence of my decline. "Get out," I said. She grabbed her purse from the floor. She marched to the door. She stopped with her hand on the knob. "Darnell hates you," she said. "He told me. He hates you for being poor. He hates you for being weak. And when he gets out, we are going to take this house and we are going to put you in the cheapest state-run facility we can find. And I am going to visit you once a year just to laugh." She slammed the door. The plaster cracked a little more. I sat there for a long time. I listened to her car drive away. I listened to the silence return to my street. Then slowly I stood up. My knees popped. I walked over to the hearth. I knelt down, ignoring the pain in my joints. I carefully picked up the photo of Esther. I brushed the glass shards off her face. The photo was scratched, but she was still smiling. "I am sorry, baby," I whispered. "I am sorry she touched you." I placed the photo on the side table. Then I took out my phone. I opened the app. I replayed the video. The audio was crisp. The video was clear. 4K resolution. I had her. I had the breaking and entering. I had the vandalism. I had the threats. I had the elder abuse. I had her admitting Darnell was guilty. But I wasn't going to call the police yet. Not yet. That would be too easy. She wanted a war. She wanted to play dirty. She thought she was fighting a poor, helpless old man. She didn't know she was fighting a general. I walked to the kitchen. I started picking up the frozen vegetables. I swept up the ceramic shards of my mug. I cleaned my house. I put everything back in order. When I was done, I sat back down in my chair with Roscoe. I waited. She said she was coming back with a doctor. She said she was coming back with a lawyer. Good. Let them come. I had $18 million, the best lawyer in the state on speed dial, and a hard drive full of evidence. The invasion was over. Now the trap was set. 2 days after Rebecca tore my house apart, she returned. She did not kick the door down this time. She did not scream. She knocked. It was a gentle, rhythmic knock. Tap, tap, tap. It was the sound of a neighbor coming to borrow sugar. It was the sound of a predator that had learned from its mistakes. I was sitting in my chair with Roscoe. The house was clean. I had swept up the glass. I had put the frozen vegetables back in the freezer even though they were ruined. I wanted the house to look normal. I wanted them to see that I was capable, but I also kept my cane across my lap. I needed the prop. I walked to the door. I opened it slowly. Rebecca stood there. She had transformed. The banshee from Tuesday was gone. In her place stood a woman wearing a modest floral dress and a cardigan. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She wore no makeup. She looked like a Sunday school teacher. She held a Tupperware container in her hands. "Good morning, Walter," she said. Her voice was soft. It dripped with a sweetness that made my teeth ache. "I brought you some soup. I know you have been having trouble cooking for yourself lately." Behind her stood 2 men. One was tall and thin, wearing a white lab coat over a cheap suit. He carried a leather medical bag. The other was short, round, and sweating in a pinstripe suit that was too tight across the chest. He held a briefcase. "Who are these people, Rebecca?" I asked. I kept my voice raspy. I let my hand shake on the doorknob. She smiled. It was a sad, pitying smile. "This is Dr. Thorne," she said, gesturing to the tall man. "And this is Mr. Vance. They are friends of mine. We are just here to help Walter. We are worried about you. After the episode the other day, we just want to make sure you are okay." The episode. She was already rewriting history. She was calling her vandalism my episode. I looked at Dr. Thorne. He had cold, dead eyes. I looked at Mr. Vance. He looked like a shark that smelled blood in the water. "I don't need a doctor," I said. "I am fine." "Please, Walter," Rebecca pleaded. "Just for a cup of tea, just for a chat. If you are fine, then you have nothing to worry about, right? It will put Darnell's mind at ease. He is so worried about you in there." She played the Darnell card. She knew that was the only way to get me to open the door. She thought I was a desperate father who would do anything for a connection to his son. She was right about one thing. I would do anything, but not for the reason she thought. "Come in," I said. I stepped back. They entered my house like a contagion. Rebecca went straight to the kitchen. The men sat at my dining table. They opened their briefcases. They took out notepads and pens. They did not look at the pictures on the walls. They did not look at the home I had built. They looked at the assets. They looked at the prey. I sat down opposite them. I kept my cane between my knees. Rebecca bustled around my kitchen. She knew where the tea bags were. She knew where the mugs were. I watched her from the corner of my eye. I saw her back was turned to me. I saw her hand dip into her pocket. I saw a quick, jerky motion over the steaming mugs. She was drugging me. It was not poison. She didn't want me dead. Not yet. A dead man's estate takes months to settle in probate. She needed me alive but compliant. She needed me pliable. It was probably a sedative. Something to make my words slur. Something to make my hands shake. Something to make me look like the senile old fool they needed me to be. She brought the tray to the table. 3 mugs. 1 for me, 1 for the doctor, 1 for the lawyer. "Here you go, Walter," she said. "Drink up. It is chamomile. It will calm your nerves." She placed the mug in front of me. The steam rose up. It smelled of flowers and something else. Something bitter and metallic. I lifted the mug. My hand trembled. I brought it to my lips. I pretended to sip. I let the hot liquid touch my lips, but I did not swallow. I made a swallowing noise in my throat. "Ah," I said. "That is hot." Drink it slowly, Dr. Thorne said. He had a deep, smooth voice, the voice of a man who sold used cars before he got his medical license. So, Mr. Robinson. Dr. Thorne began. He clicked his pen. Rebecca tells us you have been experiencing some confusion lately. Memory loss. Aggression. I put the mug down. I have not, I said. The doctor wrote something down. Denial. He muttered loud enough for me to hear. That is very common. Tell me, Mr. Robinson, do you know what year it is? It is 2024, I said. He wrote again. He frowned. And who is the President of the United States? I answered him. I answered correctly. He sighed. He looked at Rebecca. She gave him a sharp nod. Mr. Robinson, the doctor said, leaning forward, let us try a different exercise. I want you to count backward from 100 by sevens. Can you do that for me? I looked at him. I looked at the lawyer, Mr. Vance, who was pulling a thick stack of documents from his briefcase. 93, I said. 86, 79. I stopped. I pretended to lose my place. I furrowed my brow. I looked confused. 72, I whispered. The doctor smiled. He wrote furiously on his pad. Unable to perform cognitive tasks, he mumbled. Signs of advanced cognitive decline. He was lying. I had stopped on purpose. But it didn't matter what I said. The diagnosis was already written before they walked in the door. Mr. Vance slid the papers across the table. Mr. Robinson, he said, based on Dr. Thorne's preliminary evaluation and the testimony of your family, it is clear that you are no longer capable of managing your own affairs. This house, it is too much for you. The bills, the maintenance, it is overwhelming. I am fine, I said. I looked at the papers. The words at the top were in bold black letters. Emergency ex parte conservatorship. I knew what that meant. I knew the law. An ex parte order meant they could go to a judge without me being there. They could say it was an emergency. They could say I was a danger to myself. The judge would sign it based on the doctor's affidavit. And just like that, I would become a ghost in my own life. I would lose the right to sign checks. I would lose the right to hire a lawyer. I would lose the right to live in my own home. Rebecca wants to help you, Vance continued. She is willing to take on the burden of guardianship. She has found a wonderful facility for you. It is called Shady Pines. They specialize in memory care. Shady Pines. I knew that place. It was a warehouse for the dying. It was where they put people who had no money and no family. It smelled of urine and despair. And the house, I asked. We will sell the house, Rebecca said quickly. She was standing behind me, her hand on my shoulder. Her grip was tight, painful. We will use the money to pay for your care, Walter. It is the only way. And, well, Darnell needs help with his legal fees. You want to help your son, don't you? She squeezed my shoulder. It was a threat. I looked at the papers. I looked at the pen Vance was holding out to me. Just sign here, Walter Vance said. It is a voluntary transfer of power. It will look better to the judge if you cooperate. It shows you still have a lucid moment. If you don't sign, we will have to do it the hard way. The doctor will testify. Rebecca will testify. You will be declared incompetent anyway, but it will take longer, and you might end up in a state ward instead of a nice private room. It was a classic shakedown. Sign away your life, or we will take it anyway and make it hurt more. I reached for the pen. I let my hand shake violently. The tremor started in my wrist and traveled up my arm. It looked like Parkinson's. I had practiced it in the mirror. I don't know, I stammered. I feel dizzy. It is the tea, Walter, Rebecca said soothingly. It is relaxing you. Just sign. I grabbed the pen. I held it over the paper. I looked at the signature line. Then I looked at the full mug of hot tea sitting next to the papers. I let out a groan. My arm jerked. A spasm. A violent, uncontrollable twitch. My hand hit the mug. The mug flew across the table. It hit Mr. Vance right in the lap. 12 ounces of scalding hot tea soaked into the crotch of his cheap polyester pants. Vance screamed. He jumped up, knocking his chair over. He danced around the kitchen, batting at his pants, howling in pain. My papers, he yelled. My legs. You crazy old bat. Dr. Thorne jumped up to help him. Rebecca screamed. Oh my God, Walter, look what you did. Chaos. Beautiful orchestrated chaos. I sat back in my chair. I dropped the pen. I looked at the mess. I am sorry, I whispered. My hand, it slipped. While they were distracted, while Rebecca was grabbing towels and Vance was cursing and the doctor was trying to save the soaked documents, I reached into the breast pocket of my flannel shirt. I pulled out my phone. I tapped the screen. I opened the voice recorder app. I pressed the red button. I slid the phone back into my pocket, microphone facing out. I needed them to say it. I needed them to admit the conspiracy on tape. Vance was wiping his pants. He was red in the face. His professional mask was gone. "That is it," he snarled. "Forget the voluntary signature. This guy is dangerous. He is violent. Thorne, write it down. Write down that he attacked me." Thorne was nodding. He was angry too. Tea had splashed on his white coat. "I will write it, Vance. Patient exhibits violent outbursts. Loss of motor control. He is a danger to himself and others. Immediate institutionalization required." Rebecca turned on me. "You did that on purpose," she hissed. I looked at her with wide, innocent eyes. "I am old Rebecca," I said. "I am sick. Isn't that what you said?" She leaned in close. Her face was inches from mine. I could smell her perfume. It covered the smell of her fear. "You are going to regret this," she whispered. "We are going to the judge right now. We are going to get that order. And tonight men in white coats are going to come here and drag you out. And I am going to laugh while they strap you to the gurney. And then I am going to sell this house for cash to the first developer who walks by." Say it again, I thought. Say it for the microphone. "So you are going to sell my house?" I asked, my voice trembling. "To pay for Darnell." "To pay for us," she snapped. "Darnell is done. I am taking the money. I earned it. Dealing with you and your loser son for 5 years. I earned every penny of this inheritance. Got you." She admitted it. She admitted Darnell was a loser. She admitted she was stealing the money for herself. She admitted the medical diagnosis was a means to an end. Vance was packing his briefcase. The papers were stained brown and wrinkled. "Let's go," he said. "I have enough. I have the medical affidavit. I have the witness testimony of the assault. The judge is a golf buddy of mine. We will have the emergency order by 4 o'clock. We are leaving, Walter." Rebecca said, "Enjoy your last afternoon in this house. Pack a bag. You won't be coming back." They marched out. Vance walked funny, his wet pants chafing his legs. Thorne followed, looking arrogant. Rebecca slammed the door for the second time in 3 days. I waited until I heard their car drive away. I pulled the phone from my pocket. I stopped the recording. I pressed save. I named the file conspiracy_evidence_01. I stood up. I didn't need the cane anymore. I walked to the kitchen sink. I poured myself a glass of cold water. I drank it in one gulp. They were going to a judge. They were going to get an emergency order. They thought they had won. They thought the law was a weapon they could wield against the weak. But they didn't know about Strickland. They didn't know that my lawyer was already at the courthouse. They didn't know that I had already filed a preemptive motion blocking any ex parte orders. They didn't know that the judge they were going to see was currently being investigated for bribery, an investigation that Strickland had quietly tipped off to the state ethics board last week. And they didn't know about the recording I just made. I looked at the clock. It was noon. I had 4 hours before they tried to come back with the order. 4 hours to prepare the final blow. I walked to the living room. I looked at the camera hidden in the bookshelf. "You want a show, Rebecca?" I said to the empty room. "I will give you a show." I went to the garage. I opened my tool chest. I took out a heavy wrench. I weighed it in my hand. It wasn't for violence, it was for insurance. Tonight they were coming to take my life. Tonight they were going to find out that some old dogs don't just bark. They bite. And when they lock their jaws, they never let go. The silence in my house was heavy the next morning. It was not a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that hangs in the air before a tornado touches down. I sat in the kitchen with my 3rd cup of coffee, staring at the empty space where my favorite mug used to be before Rebecca smashed it. The camera on the fridge blinked its tiny red eye, a silent sentinel watching over an old man who was done being a victim. I was planning my next move against the lawyer Vance when I heard a sound at the back door. It was not a knock. It was a scratch. A small, hesitant sound like a stray cat asking for milk. Roscoe lifted his head from his paws and whined. He did not growl. He wagged his tail, a slow thump-thump against the floorboards. That told me everything I needed to know. The person at the door was not a threat. The person at the door was Pack. I walked to the back door and pulled back the curtain. My heart squeezed inside my chest. Sitting on the back steps, shivering in a denim jacket that was 2 sizes too small, was Leo, my grandson. He was sitting next to his bicycle, his knees pulled up to his chest, his face buried in his arms. I unlocked the door and threw it open. Leo looked up. His face was streaked with tears and dirt. His eyes, so much like my Esther's eyes, were red and terrified. "Grandpa," he choked out. "Leo," I said, dropping to my knees. I didn't care about the arthritis. I didn't care about the cold concrete. I pulled him into my arms. He smelled like sweat and wind and childhood. He was trembling so hard his teeth chattered. "What are you doing here, son?" I asked, rubbing his back. "You should be in school. Does Rebecca know you are here?" He shook his head violently against my chest. "She said you are bad, Grandpa. She said you put Daddy in jail. She said you are crazy and you want to hurt us. She told me to stay in my room until she figured out what to do with me." I felt a flash of rage so hot it almost blinded me. Rebecca was poisoning the only good thing Darnell had ever produced. Leo was Darnell's son from a girl he dated in high school, a sweet girl who died in a car accident when Leo was 3. Rebecca treated him like a piece of luggage she wished she had lost at the airport. I stood up and pulled him inside. "Come in, Leo. You are safe here. Nobody is going to hurt you. Not Rebecca. Not anyone." I sat him down at the kitchen table. I made him a grilled cheese sandwich the way he liked it with extra butter on the bread. I poured him a glass of milk. I watched him eat. He ate like he hadn't seen food in 2 days. "Daddy isn't coming back, is he?" Leo asked, his mouth full of bread and cheese. I sat opposite him. I wasn't going to lie to the boy. He was 10 years old, but he had lived a hard 10 years. He knew when adults were lying. "Your daddy is in some trouble, Leo," I said. "He made some bad choices. He has to stay with the police for a while until things get sorted out." "Is it because of the package?" Leo asked. I froze. The room seemed to get colder. "What package, Leo?" "The black one," he said. "The one he had in the garage. He told me to go inside and play video games, but I watched him from the window. He was wrapping a brick in black tape." He looked scared, Grandpa. He was crying. I reached across the table and took Leo's small hand. My hand was rough and calloused. His was soft and sticky with butter. "You saw him?" I asked. Leo nodded. "He told Rebecca he had to hide it. He said if he didn't hide it, the bad men would come back." My grip tightened on his hand. Bad men. Leo looked down at his plate. He reached into his backpack, which was sitting on the floor. He pulled out an iPad. It was an old model, the screen cracked in the corner. It was Darnell's old one, the one he gave to Leo when he upgraded to the newest version. "I took this," Leo whispered. "I wasn't supposed to. Daddy told me not to touch his work stuff. But I heard Rebecca talking on the phone last night. She was talking to her mom. She said she was going to burn everything in the house that had Daddy's name on it. She said she was going to erase him. So I took it." He pushed the iPad across the table toward me. "I think there is bad stuff on here, Grandpa. Daddy was always texting on it late at night. He would get mad if I looked over his shoulder." I looked at the device. It was locked. I pressed the home button. A 6-digit passcode screen appeared. "Do you know the code, Leo?" He shook his head. "He changed it last week." I looked at the iPad. It was an Apple device, encrypted, hard to crack. But I knew a guy. In Detroit, if you work on trucks long enough, you know a guy for everything. I knew a man named Spider. He wasn't a criminal exactly. He was a wizard with vehicle diagnostics and computer boards. He ran a shop 3 blocks over fixing ECUs for trucks that the dealership said were dead. If anyone could get into this thing without wiping the data, it was Spider. "Finish your sandwich, Leo," I said. "We are going for a ride." I put Leo in the passenger seat of my Ford. He looked small in the big cab. I drove to Spider's shop. It was a corrugated metal shed behind a tire yard. The air smelled of ozone and solder. Spider was there hunched over a circuit board with a magnifying glass. He was a skinny white guy with tattoos up his neck and fingers that never stopped moving. "Walter," he said, not looking up. "I heard about Darnell. Word travels fast. You okay?" "I am surviving, Spider," I said. "I need a favor." Spider looked up then. He saw Leo. He saw the iPad in my hand. "I need into this," I said. Darnell changed the code. "Leo thinks there's something on here I need to see." Spider took the iPad. He turned it over in his hands. He plugged it into a laptop that looked like it was built from spare parts. He typed furiously for a few minutes. Screens flashed with code I didn't understand. "This isn't a standard jailbreak," Walter Spider mumbled. But Darnell, he is lazy. He reused his iCloud backup password, amateur. 2 minutes later, the iPad dinged. The screen unlocked. Spider handed it back to me. "Keep it offline," he warned. "If it connects to the network, Darnell or his wife could wipe it remotely." I thanked Spider. I slipped him a $100 bill, which he tried to refuse, but I tucked it into his shirt pocket. I drove us back to the house. I sat Leo in front of the TV with a cartoon. I went into the kitchen. I sat down with the iPad. I opened the messaging app. There were hundreds of threads. Real estate clients, Rebecca nagging him for money. But pinned to the top was a thread with no name, just a number, and a profile picture of a black scorpion. I opened it. My stomach turned to ice. The conversation went back 6 months. It started with small loans, 5,000, 10,000. Then the tone changed. The interest rates piled up. Darnell was begging. He was asking for extensions. Then 3 days ago, "Sender time is up, Darnell. You are into us for 150 large. Big T is losing his patience." "Darnell, I need more time. I have a plan. My father is sick. He is going to sign the house over to me." "Sender, we don't care about your daddy. We want our paper." "Darnell, the house is worth 400,000. The land is worth more. I can sell it next week." "Sender, you don't have the deed." "Darnell, I forged his signature on the transfer papers. I have a notary who will stamp it. I just need him out of the way so I can show the house." I stopped reading. I put the iPad down on the table. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from a rage so cold it burned. He had forged my signature. He had already stolen the house on paper. That was why he was so desperate for me to go to a home. He needed the house empty so he could liquidate it. But I kept reading. It got worse. Yesterday, the day of the arrest. "Darnell, the plan failed. He didn't sign. The drugs are gone. I am in jail. You have to wait." "Sender, we are done waiting. You failed the delivery. You lost the product. That is another 50K you owe." "Darnell, I can't pay from inside." "Sender, then we take collateral. That house on Michigan Avenue. We checked the records. It is still in the old man's name, but you said you have the papers ready." "Darnell, I do. I just need him gone." "Sender, we can help with that. If he is still in the house by Friday, we burn it down." I stared at the screen. Friday. That was in 3 days. "Darnell, do what you have to do. Just leave me out of it. If the house burns, the land is still there. I can sell the lot. Just make sure it looks like an accident. Old wiring, gas leak, whatever. Sender. Consider it done. Friday night, midnight. If we don't have our money, we light a match." I read Darnell's last message again. "Do what you have to do." He gave the order. My son, the boy I held when he had chickenpox, the boy I taught to ride a bike. He gave the order to burn his childhood home with his father inside. He didn't say make sure he gets out. He didn't say scare him. He said make sure it looks like an accident. He was willing to let me die. He was willing to let me burn to ash so he could sell the dirt beneath my feet to pay off a gambling debt. I sat there for a long time. The kitchen was silent except for the sound of the cartoon from the living room. I looked at the iPad. This was it. This was the smoking gun. This wasn't just fraud. This wasn't just drugs. This was conspiracy to commit murder. I looked up. Leo was standing in the doorway. He was holding his empty glass of milk. "Grandpa," he said softly, "are you okay? You look scary." I softened my face. I forced the rage down into the pit of my stomach where I could use it later. I forced a smile onto my lips. "I am okay, Leo. I found what I needed." "Did Daddy do something bad?" he asked. I stood up. I walked over to him. I took the glass from his hand and set it on the counter. I knelt down so I was eye level with him. "Leo, your daddy is lost. He is very lost. But you are found. You did a brave thing today. You saved me. Do you know that? You saved my life." His eyes widened. "I did. You did. Now listen to me. We cannot stay here tonight. It isn't safe." "Why?" he asked. "Is Rebecca coming back?" "No," I said. "Something worse. But don't you worry. Grandpa has a plan. Grandpa always has a plan." I stood up. I grabbed the iPad. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. It looked like a normal day in the neighborhood, but I knew better. I knew that in the shadows wolves were gathering, and my son had opened the gate to let them in. I looked at my truck in the driveway. I looked at the house that held 40 years of my life. Let them come, I thought. Let them bring their matches and their gasoline. They thought they were burning down a helpless old man's house. They didn't know they were walking into a fortress commanded by a man with nothing left to lose and $18 million to fight with. "Get your shoes, Leo," I said. "We are going to see a lawyer, and then we are going to go shopping." "What are we shopping for?" Leo asked. "Insurance," I said. "Heavy-duty insurance." Friday night arrived with a cold wind blowing off the Detroit River. The streetlights buzzed and flickered, casting long, nervous shadows across my lawn. I had sent Leo to stay with Strickland for the weekend. I told him it was a sleepover. I told him Strickland had a new puppy. Leo was smart, but he was still a child. He didn't need to see what happens when wolves come to blow a house down. I was alone. The house was dark. I had unscrewed the bulb on the front porch light. I wanted them to think I was asleep. I wanted them to think I was vulnerable. I sat in a folding chair just inside the garage door, the metal cool against my back. Next to me sat a 20-pound industrial fire extinguisher, the kind we used to keep on the rigs to put out engine fires. Across my lap lay my Remington 8.7-0 pump-action shotgun. It was loaded with rock salt shells. I didn't want to kill anyone tonight. Killing brings the police, and the police asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. I just wanted to send a message. I checked my watch. 2 a.m, the witching hour, the time when courage comes from a bottle and bad ideas seem like genius. Darnell's text messages on the iPad had been specific. Midnight was the deadline. They were late. That meant they were either hesitant or they were arrogant. I bet on arrogant. These young street soldiers didn't know how to tell time. They didn't know discipline. At 2:15, a black SUV rolled down the street. It was moving slow, prowling. The headlights were off. The engine was a low rumble, a V8 trying to whisper. It stopped right in front of my driveway. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I watched through the small, dirty window of the garage door. 2 doors opened. 2 men stepped out. They were wearing dark hoodies and ski masks. They looked like shadows detached from the night. One of them held a rag. The other held a lighter. I heard the clink of glass. Molotov cocktails. Crude. Messy. Amateur. They weren't here to collect. They were here to punish. They were here to burn 40 years of history because my son couldn't cover the spread on a football game. The first man lit the rag. The flame flared up, illuminating his masked face. He wound up his arm. He threw the bottle. It tumbled through the air, end over end, a streak of orange fire against the black sky. It smashed against the garage door right in the center. The glass shattered. The gasoline sprayed. A wall of fire erupted, climbing up the wood I had painted just last summer. The second man laughed. It was a cruel, high-pitched sound. He lit his bottle. He threw it. This one aimed for the front porch. It landed on the steps, splashing fire across the welcome mat Esther had bought 3 months before she died. They stood there for a second, admiring their work. They expected the old man to run out screaming. They expected to see the house go up like a matchbox. But they didn't know I had spent the afternoon coating the garage door and the porch with a fire-retardant gel I bought from a supply warehouse in Dearborn. The wood wasn't catching. The gasoline was burning itself out on the surface, unable to find purchase. I kicked the side door open. I stepped out into the smoke. I grabbed the extinguisher. I pulled the pin. I squeezed the handle. A massive cloud of white chemical powder blasted out. It hit the garage door with the force of a gale. The fire choked. It hissed and died in seconds. I turned and blasted the porch. The flames vanished under a blanket of white dust. The 2 men in the street froze. They weren't looking at a panic-stricken victim. They were looking at a man who had just erased their violence with a squeeze of a handle. I dropped the extinguisher. It clattered loudly on the driveway. I raised the Remington. I racked the slide. Cha-chick. The sound was louder than the fire. It echoed down the empty street. It was the universal language of stop right there. The 2 men scrambled back toward the SUV. The driver who had stayed in the car gunned the engine. He was ready to leave them behind. "Don't move," I shouted. My voice wasn't an old man's voice. It was the voice of the foreman shouting over the roar of diesel engines. It was a command. The 2 men stopped. They looked at the shotgun pointed at their chests. They looked at the open car door. "Tell your driver to cut the engine," I said, "or I take out the tires. And then I take out the radiator. And then I take out the windshield." One of the men waved at the car. The engine cut. Silence returned to the street, heavy and smelling of burnt gas and chemical powder. "Take off the masks," I said. They hesitated. I lowered the aim of the shotgun. I aimed for the kneecaps. "I count to 3, I said. 1, 2. They pulled the masks off. They were kids, maybe 20, 21. Scared eyes, trying to look hard. But the one in the middle, the one who threw the first bottle, looked familiar. He had a scar above his eyebrow shaped like a crescent moon. He had a way of standing, shoulders hunched, jaw tight, that I recognized. I stepped out of the shadows of the driveway. I walked into the pool of light from the street lamp. I let them see me. I let them see the face of the man they tried to burn. The one with the scar squinted. He tilted his head. His eyes went wide. "Mr. Robinson," he whispered. I lowered the gun just an inch. I looked at him close. "You look just like your daddy," I said. "Same eyes, same stubborn jaw. You are Kofi, Big T's nephew." The boy swallowed hard. He nodded. "I knew your daddy, Kofi," I said. "I knew him before he was Big T's brother. I knew him when he was just Percy. I knew him when he was driving a beat-up box truck trying to run cigarettes from the Carolinas. Do you know who kept that truck running?" Kofi looked at his feet. "You did, Mr. Robinson." "That is right," I said. "I kept him on the road. I fixed his brakes when he couldn't pay me. I lent him money for gas when he was broke. I sat at your kitchen table and ate your mama's cornbread while you were in diapers. And this is how you repay me. You come to my house in the middle of the night and try to burn me alive. It wasn't personal." "Mr. Robinson," Kofi stammered. He held his hands up. "It is business. Darnell owes. He owes big. My uncle—" He said we had to send a message. He said Darnell was playing games. "Darnell is in jail," I said. "Darnell is out of the game." "The debt is still there," the other boy said. He was trying to be tough. He didn't know who I was. He just saw an old man with a gun. I shifted my aim to the second boy. "Be quiet, son. The grown-ups are talking." I looked back at Kofi. "Darnell owes you money. I understand that. A debt is a debt. In my day we paid our debts, but in my day we didn't burn down the houses of men who helped raise us. We didn't attack civilians." Kofi looked ashamed. He looked at the scorched garage door. "We didn't know it was you, Mr. Robinson. Darnell just gave us the address. He said it was his father's house. He said the old man wouldn't do anything." "Darnell is a fool," I said. "Darnell thinks the world is soft because I made it soft for him. But you know better, Kofi. You know where I come from. You know what I built with these hands." I held up my free hand. It was scarred and stained with oil. It was a hand that had built engines and broken noses. "So here is the deal," I said. I stepped closer. I was 5 feet away from them now. I could smell their fear. "I am not calling the police. The police write reports. They file paperwork. They don't solve problems. I solve problems." Kofi nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Robinson. We will go." "You aren't going anywhere yet," I said. "You are going to take a message to your uncle. You are going to tell Big T that Walter Robinson said hello. You are going to tell him that I know about the debt." "We want the money," the second boy said again. 150,000, plus interest. The VIG is running every day." I looked at him. I smiled. It was a cold, humorless smile. "The interest stops tonight," I said. "You tell your uncle that." "The principal stands. 150,000. Darnell borrowed it. Darnell pays it. But the interest is frozen. The threats stop. The fires stop. No more late-night visits. No more phone calls. Why would Big T agree to that?" The second boy sneered. "You got no leverage, old man. You are just a mechanic." I looked at Kofi. "Does he know Kofi? Does he know what I really do?" Kofi shook his head. "No, sir. He doesn't know. Tell him I said." Kofi turned to his friend. "Shut up, man. You don't know who this is. This is the man who owns the depot on 8 Mile, the one where Uncle T keeps his fleet." The second boy looked confused. "The depot? I thought the Italians owned that." "Mr. Robinson owns it," Kofi said quietly. "He owns the land. He owns the fence. He owns the security cameras. He leases it to the Italians, and he lets my uncle park his trucks there off the books because of my dad." The second boy's mouth dropped open. He looked at the rusty Ford truck in the driveway. He looked at my small house. He couldn't reconcile the two images. "That is right," I said. "I hold the keys to your uncle's logistics. I know what is in those trucks. I know when they move. I know where they go. If I make one phone call, the gates lock. If I make 2 phone calls, the feds raid the lot. I let that sink in. I watched the realization wash over them. They weren't dealing with a victim. They were dealing with a landlord. So here is the deal I repeated. The interest is frozen. The debt stays with Darnell. When I decide what to do with my son, I will let you know how he is going to pay you. Until then, my house is holy ground. If I see one more match, one more scratch on my paint, one more threat, I shut down the depot. I hand the keys to the FBI. And your uncle goes away for the rest of his life. Do we have an understanding? Kofi nodded vigorously. Yes, sir. We understand. I will tell him. I will tell him tonight. And Kofi, I added, yes, sir. You come back here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. You bring a sander and a bucket of paint. You are going to fix my garage door, and you are going to scrub my porch until it looks new. Kofi didn't argue. He didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. I will be here. Get out of my sight, I said. They scrambled back into the SUV. The engine roared to life. They backed out of the street so fast they almost hit the curb. I watched them go. I watched the taillights disappear around the corner. I lowered the shotgun. I let out a long breath. My arms were shaking. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. I felt old. I felt tired. I looked at the scorched wood of my garage. It was ugly. It was a scar on my home. But the house was still standing. I was still standing. I walked back to the porch. I sat down on the steps right next to where the fire had tried to eat my welcome mat. I rested the shotgun across my knees. I had bought myself some time. I had neutralized the immediate threat, but the war wasn't over. Darnell was still in jail plotting. Rebecca was still out there hungry for my money, and now I had to figure out how to pay a $150,000 debt without revealing my fortune to the world. I looked up at the stars. They were dim, hidden by the city lights. You raised a fool, Walter, I whispered to myself. You raised a fool, and now you have to pay the price. But I wasn't going to pay with my money. I wasn't going to write a check. That would be too easy. Darnell needed to pay. He needed to feel the weight of his choices. I stood up. I went inside and locked the door. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I knew every inch of this house. I knew where the floorboards creaked. I knew where the shadows lived. I went to the kitchen. I picked up the iPad. I looked at the messages again. Friday night, midnight. They had tried. They had failed. Now it was my turn. I typed a message to the number with the scorpion profile picture. This is Walter Robinson. The debt is acknowledged. The interest is 0. Ask Kofi why. Darnell stays in jail until I say otherwise. Do not touch him. Do not touch my house. We will talk soon. I hit send. I put the iPad down. I went to bed. I put the shotgun on the nightstand. I slept. But one eye stayed open, because when you dance with wolves, you never really close your eyes. Monday morning arrived with the gray heaviness of a prison door slamming shut. The Wayne County Courthouse was a massive block of limestone and misery located in downtown Detroit. It smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. I walked through the metal detectors with Strickland at my side. Strickland looked like a shark that had decided to wear a suit for the day. He wore a navy blue pinstripe that cost more than Darnell's lease payments for a year. He carried a battered leather briefcase that had seen more acquittals than I had seen oil changes. I walked slowly. I used my cane. I wore my Sunday suit, the one I bought at a department store 10 years ago. It was clean, but the cuffs were frayed. I wanted the judge to see a pensioner. I wanted the world to see a grandfather. We entered the courtroom. It was crowded. Darnell's arraignment was just one of 50 on the docket, but because of the quantity of drugs found, it had attracted attention. A few local reporters were in the back row. I saw Rebecca sitting in the front row behind the defense table. She was wearing black. She looked like a grieving widow, even though her husband was still breathing. She held a tissue to her nose and dabbed at dry eyes. When she saw me, her eyes narrowed into slits of pure venom, but she quickly masked it with a look of terrified sorrow. She was good. I had to give her that. Darnell was brought in. He was wearing the orange jumpsuit. His wrists and ankles were shackled. He looked thin. He looked tired. He scanned the room until he found me. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked desperate. He looked like a boy who realized the game was over but was still hoping for a restart button. All rise, the bailiff shouted. The Honorable Judge Harriet Moore entered. She was a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose. I knew of her. She was tough on drugs. She was tough on excuses. Strickland leaned over to me. She is fair, Walter, he whispered, but she doesn't like nonsense. Let them dig the hole first. Darnell's lawyer stood up. His name was Klein. He was young, slick, and expensive. I knew Rebecca must have pawned everything she owned or begged her parents to pay his retainer. Klein adjusted his tie and walked toward the bench. Your Honor, he began, his voice smooth as oil. We are requesting reasonable bail for Mr. Robinson. He is a pillar of the community, a businessman, a husband. He has no prior criminal record. This entire situation is a tragic misunderstanding stemming from a toxic family dynamic. Judge Moore looked over her glasses. A kilogram of methamphetamine is a very heavy misunderstanding, Counselor. Klein nodded solemnly. Indeed it is, Your Honor. But the drugs did not belong to my client. We have reason to believe, and we intend to prove, that the narcotics belonged to his father, Walter Robinson. The courtroom murmured. I sat still. I stared straight ahead. Klein pointed a finger at me. Mr. Walter Robinson is a mechanic with a history of off-the-book dealings. He operates in cash. He has access to heavy transport vehicles. My client Darnell was merely visiting his father. He believes his father, suffering from early-onset dementia and perhaps involved in criminal activities to supplement his pension, placed the package in Darnell's car in a moment of confusion or malice. I felt the eyes of the room on me. They saw an old man. They saw the cane. They wondered if the lawyer was right. Was I the villain? Was I the senile drug lord? Klein continued. Darnell is a victim here, a victim of a father who is losing his grip on reality. We ask that he be released on his own recognizance so he can return to his work and his wife. He is not a flight risk. He is a man trying to help his sick father. Judge Moore looked at Darnell. Is this true, Mr. Robinson? Darnell stood up. He looked at his shoes. Yes, Your Honor. My dad... He gets confused. He forgets things. I think he thought my car was his truck. I tried to tell the police, but they wouldn't listen. It was a lie so bold it took my breath away. He was doubling down. He was willing to send me to prison or a psych ward to save himself. Judge Moore looked at Rebecca. Mrs. Robinson, do you have anything to add? Rebecca stood up. She trembled. It was a perfect performance. Your Honor, she whispered, we love Walter. We really do. But he has been violent lately. He threw a mug at our lawyer just the other day. He destroys things in his house. We tried to get him help. We tried to get him into a home. We think he is acting out because he is scared. Darnell is innocent. Please let him come home. She started to cry, soft, racking sobs. Judge Moore looked sympathetic. She looked at me. Mr. Walter Robinson, do you have counsel? Strickland stood up. The wood of the bench creaked under his hand. I represent Walter Robinson, Your Honor. The judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Strickland, I haven't seen you in my courtroom in years. I thought you were retired. I was, Your Honor, Strickland rumbled, until my client, a decorated veteran and a man of unimpeachable character, was accused of being a drug kingpin by the very people he raised and fed. Klein jumped up. Objection. Characterizing the defendant's family is irrelevant. Overruled, the judge said. I want to hear this. Mr. Strickland, do you have anything to say regarding the bail motion? I do, Your Honor, Strickland said. He walked to the center of the room. He didn't use notes. He didn't need them. The defense claims Mr. Darnell Robinson is a victim. They claim he is a loving son. They claim my client Walter is senile and criminal. These are bold claims. Fortunately, the truth has a way of being recorded. Strickland pulled a flash drive from his pocket. I would like to submit 2 pieces of evidence for the bail hearing, Your Honor. They speak directly to the defendant's flight, risk his character, and the likelihood that he is lying to this court. Klein looked nervous. What evidence? We haven't seen this. It was obtained from the police report and my client's own security system, Your Honor, Strickland said. It is admissible. The judge nodded. Play it. The bailiff took the drive. He plugged it into the court system. A large screen on the wall flickered to life. The first video was grainy. It was from the police body cam. It showed the chaotic scene on the street, the blue lights flashing, Darnell on the ground. The audio filled the courtroom. It was in the truck. Darnell's voice screamed from the speakers. It was in the truck. I put it in the truck. I put it under the dashboard of the old man's truck. The video paused. Strickland turned to the judge. I put it in the truck. Not my father put it there. Not I found it there. I put it there. That is an admission of possession, Your Honor. And it is an admission of intent to frame a third party. Darnell's face turned gray. Klein was whispering furiously to him. "But there is more," Strickland said. "The defense claims Rebecca Robinson is a loving daughter-in-law who is afraid of my client's violence. They claim Walter is senile. Let us listen to what Mrs. Robinson sounds like when she thinks no one is watching." The screen went black. The audio from my kitchen played. It was crystal clear. "You are a useless, pathetic old man. Darnell is in jail because of you. If you weren't so poor, if you weren't such a failure, he wouldn't have had to work for those people. He wouldn't have had to move drugs to pay bills." The courtroom was silent. Rebecca stopped crying. Her mouth hung open. She looked at the speaker on the wall as if it were a demon. The audio continued. "We are going to take this house and we are going to put you in the cheapest state-run facility we can find. And I am going to visit you once a year just to laugh." Strickland signaled the bailiff to stop the tape. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this does not sound like a loving family dealing with a sick patriarch. This sounds like a conspiracy to defraud abuse and frame an innocent man. It confirms that the defendant was moving drugs to pay bills. It confirms he is working for dangerous people. And it confirms that if he is released, he has no place to go because he has threatened the homeowner of the address listed on his bail application." Judge Moore looked at Darnell. Her face was hard as stone. She looked at Rebecca. She looked at Klein. "Mr. Klein," she said. Her voice was ice. "Do you have any explanation for why your client admitted to placing the drugs in his father's truck on police video?" Klein stammered. "Your Honor, my client was under duress." He was confused. "He seemed very clear to me," the judge said. "And Mrs. Robinson?" She looked at Rebecca. Rebecca shrank in her seat. "Your performance was convincing," the judge said. "But the audio paints a different picture." Judge Moore banged her gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. "Bail is denied. The defendant is a flight risk and a danger to the community. He is remanded to custody pending trial." Darnell screamed, "No! No, you can't do this. I will die in there. Big T will kill me." The bailiffs moved in. They grabbed Darnell by the arms. "Dad," Darnell yelled, looking back at me. "Dad, help me. Tell them. Tell them you have money. Pay them." I sat still. I looked at him. I looked at the son who had just tried to paint me as a criminal. I didn't say a word. I just watched. They dragged him out through the side door. The heavy metal door slammed shut. Rebecca stood up. She looked at me. Her eyes were full of hate. "You recorded me," she hissed. "You illegal old creep." I stood up. Strickland stood with me. "It is my house, Rebecca," I said. "I can record whatever I want. And you might want to call your lawyer back. I think you are going to need him soon." She stormed out of the courtroom, her heels clicking angrily on the floor. Strickland clapped me on the shoulder. "That went well." "It went well," I agreed. "But it isn't over." "No," Strickland said. "Now she is desperate. And a desperate woman is dangerous." We walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight. I took a deep breath of fresh air. Darnell was locked up. He was safe from the streets, even if he wasn't safe from his debts. But Rebecca was loose. And she knew now. She knew I was fighting back. I got into my truck. I drove to the hardware store. I bought new locks. I bought deadbolts. I bought security bars for the windows. I went home. I spent the afternoon fortifying my house. I wasn't building a home anymore. I was building a bunker. Because Strickland was right. Rebecca was desperate. She had lost her husband. She had lost her income. She had lost her dignity in open court. She had nothing left to lose. And that meant she was coming for the only thing left. She was coming for the house. At 6 o'clock, a moving truck pulled up to the curb. It wasn't moving my stuff out. It was moving her stuff in. I watched from the window. Rebecca got out of the truck. She walked up the driveway. She wasn't sneaking. She was marching. She held a piece of paper in her hand. I opened the door before she could knock. "What is this, Rebecca?" I asked. She slapped the paper against the screen door. It was a court order, a temporary guardianship order for Leo. "I am Leo's legal guardian," she said. "Darnell signed the papers this morning from jail. Since you are unfit, and since this is Darnell's address of record, I am moving in to take care of his son. And since I am his guardian, I have a right to reside in the family home." She smiled. It was the smile of a shark. "Try to kick me out, Walter. I dare you. If you kick me out, you kick Leo out. And I will call Child Protective Services so fast your head will spin." I looked at the paper. It looked legal. Darnell had signed it. He had given her the weapon she needed to invade my sanctuary. I opened the door. "Come in, Rebecca," I said. She blinked. She expected a fight. She expected me to scream. "Come in," I repeated. She signaled the movers. They started carrying boxes of clothes, shoes, and expensive furniture into my living room. She walked past me, her head held high. "I am taking the master bedroom," she announced. "You can sleep in the guest room, or the garage. I don't care." I closed the door. I locked it. She thought she had won. She thought she had used Leo as a shield to take my castle. But she didn't know the rules of siege warfare. When you trap yourself inside with the enemy, you better make sure you have enough supplies. I walked to the basement. I found the main water valve. I turned it off. I found the breaker box. I flipped the switch for the water heater. I went to the router. I changed the password. Then I went to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I took out a package of chitterlings I had bought from the butcher. 10 pounds of pig intestines. Raw. Smelly. I put a large pot on the stove. I filled it with water. I dumped the chitterlings in. I turned the heat to low. I sat down in my chair with Roscoe. "Welcome home, Rebecca," I whispered. "Let's see how long you last." The invasion began at sunset, and by midnight, my house was no longer a home. It was a battlefield. Rebecca moved into the master bedroom, the room I had shared with Esther for 30 years. She dragged the mattress off the frame and pushed it against the wall because she said the feng shui was bad. She threw Esther's quilts onto the floor. She covered the dresser with her makeup bottles and hairsprays until the air smelled like a chemical factory. She walked around like she owned the deed, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors like a hammer striking a nail. I retreated to the guest room down the hall. I took Roscoe with me. I locked the door. I could hear her moving furniture. I could hear her talking on the phone, her voice loud and screeching, telling her friends how she had finally taken control. She told them I was a broken old man hiding in the spare room. She told them she was the queen of the castle now. She was wrong. She was not the queen. She was a rat who had crawled into a trap and didn't know the door had snapped shut. The psychological warfare started at 2 in the morning. I was lying in the narrow guest bed staring at the ceiling when the bass started. It thumped through the floorboards. It rattled the window panes. It was trap music, loud and aggressive, playing from a Bluetooth speaker she had set up in the living room. She wasn't listening to it. She was using it as a weapon. She wanted to deprive me of sleep. She wanted to break my mind. I put my noise-canceling earmuffs on, the ones I used when I was grinding metal in the garage. I slept for 3 hours. I woke up at 5. The music had stopped. The house was quiet. I opened my door. The hallway was a disaster zone. There were pizza boxes scattered on the floor. There were empty wine bottles on my side table. She had ordered food late at night and left the remains for the roaches. She wanted an infestation. She wanted to turn my clean, orderly house into a slum so she could point at it and say, "Look how the old man lives." I walked to the kitchen. There was a man sitting at my table. He was not Darnell. He was a stranger. He was wearing a tank top and jeans. He had tattoos on his neck and a gold chain that looked fake. He was eating a slice of cold pizza from the box. He looked at me with bored, bloodshot eyes. "Who are you?" I asked. He chewed slowly. "I am a friend of Rebecca." "Who are you?" "I am the owner of this house," I said. He laughed. "Rebecca said, you are the help. She said you are the maintenance guy." I looked at him. He was young, dumb, just another muscle she had brought in to intimidate me. "Get out," I said. He stood up. He was big. He tried to loom over me. "Rebecca said, I can stay. She is the lady of the house. You got a problem with that old man." I didn't back down. I didn't blink. I looked at his neck. I looked at the specific tattoo of a teardrop under his eye. "You are sitting in a house monitored by 6 high-definition cameras," I said. "Everything you do is being recorded and sent to a cloud server. If you touch me, if you break anything, you will be in jail before you finish that pizza. And I know you have warrants. Men with teardrop tattoos always have warrants." He froze. He looked around. He saw the red light on top of the fridge. He didn't say a word. He grabbed his jacket. He walked out the back door. Rebecca came into the kitchen 5 minutes later. She was wearing a silk robe. She looked around. "Where is T-Bone?" she asked. "He left," I said. "He didn't like the service." She glared at me. "You chased him off. You can't do that. I have rights. I can have guests." "You can have guests," I said, "but you cannot have criminals. and you cannot leave trash on my floor." She kicked the pizza box. "I will leave whatever I want wherever I want. This is my house now." "You are just a guest, Walter, and if you don't like it, you can leave. You can go to a shelter." I picked up the pizza box. I threw it in the trash. "I am not going anywhere, Rebecca." She smirked. "We will see about that." She spent the rest of the day trying to break me. She turned the thermostat up to 90 degrees. She flushed the toilets repeatedly to waste water. She invited 2 more friends over, loud girls who smoked cigarettes in my living room, and put them out on my coffee table. They laughed at my pictures. They laughed at my clothes. They treated me like a ghost haunting my own life. I said nothing. I sat in my chair. I watched them. When evening came, Rebecca decided to take a shower. She announced it loudly. "I am going to take a long hot bath in the master suite," she said. "Don't disturb me." I waited until I heard the water running. I waited until I heard the bathroom door lock. Then I walked to the basement. My basement is my fortress. It is where the furnace lives. It is where the water heater lives. It is where the breaker box lives. It is a tangle of pipes and wires that only I understand. I walked to the water heater. It was a heavy industrial model I had installed myself. I found the intake valve. I turned it. The wheel squeaked, then locked tight. I cut the hot water. Then I went to the breaker box. I found the switch labeled Master Bedroom Outlets. I flipped it. Then I went to the modem in the corner. I logged into the admin panel on my phone. I changed the password to get out Rebecca 123. I went back upstairs. I sat in the kitchen. 2 minutes later, I heard a scream. It was a cold, wet scream. Rebecca came running out of the bedroom. She was wrapped in a towel. Her hair was full of shampoo. She was shivering. "The water," she yelled. "The water is freezing." And the lights went out. "The hairdryer won't work." I sipped my coffee. "Old houses," I said. "The plumbing is tricky. The wiring is bad." "I told you the house was falling apart." "Fix it," she demanded. "Go down there and fix it." "I can't," I said. "My knees, they are bad today. I can't do stairs." She looked at me with pure hate. "You are lying. You did this. Prove it," I said. She tried to check her phone. She looked at the screen. She tapped it furiously. "The Wi-Fi," she screamed. "The internet is down. I can't stream anything." I shrugged. "Maybe you should call the cable company. They might come out next week." She screamed in frustration. She marched back to the bedroom to rinse her hair in the sink with cold water. I smiled. Phase 1 was complete. I had taken away her comforts. Now it was time for Phase 2. I was going to take away her air. I opened the refrigerator. I pulled out the package I had bought from the butcher 3 days ago. It was a 10-pound bag of chitterlings, pig intestines, raw, uncleaned. If you have never smelled raw chitterlings, you cannot imagine the horror. It smells like a barnyard that has been set on fire. It smells like death and manure. It is a smell that sticks to your clothes, your hair, your skin. It is a smell that separates the weak from the strong. I did not clean them. Usually you spend hours scrubbing them with vinegar and lemon to get the smell out. I did not do that. I wanted the smell. I wanted the full, unadulterated funk. I put a massive pot on the stove. I filled it with water. I dumped the intestines in. I added onions and garlic not to mask the smell, but to make it carry further. I turned the burner on low. I wanted a slow simmer. I wanted the steam to rise up and fill every crack and crevice of the house. I went to Leo's room. I knocked gently. He opened the door. He looked scared. "Grandpa, what is that smell?" he asked. I handed him a jar of Vicks VapoRub. "Put this under your nose, son," I said, "and keep your window open. Grandpa is cooking dinner." "But it smells like the bathroom," he said. "I know," I said. "Trust me." I went back to the kitchen. The water was boiling. The steam was rising. The smell hit me like a physical blow. It was heavy, thick. It smelled like the inside of a pig. I sat in my chair. I breathed through my mouth. Rebecca came out of the bedroom an hour later. She was dressed in sweatpants and a hoodie. She stopped in the hallway. She gagged. She covered her nose and mouth with her sleeve. "Oh my God," she choked out. "What is that? Is the sewer backing up? Did something die?" I stirred the pot. The smell billowed out in a fresh wave. "It is dinner, Rebecca," I said. "Chitterlings, soul food. You said you wanted to be part of the family. This is what we eat." She walked into the kitchen. Her eyes were watering. She looked at the gray, boiling mass in the pot. She looked like she was going to vomit. "Throw that out," she ordered. Her voice was muffled by her sleeve. "Throw it out right now. I can't breathe." "I can't throw it out," I said. "Ideally, it needs to cook for 24 hours to get tender." 24 hours, she screamed. She gagged again. She ran to the sink and dry heaved. "You are doing this on purpose," she accused, tears streaming down her face. "You are trying to smoke me out." "I am just cooking, Rebecca," I said innocently. "A man has to eat, and since you threw out all my vegetables, this is all I have left." She ran to the window and tried to open it. It was painted shut. I had made sure of that years ago for security. "Open a window," she yelled. "They are stuck," I said. "Old house." She looked at me. She looked at the pot. She looked at the ceiling where the steam was gathering in a cloud. "I hate you," she hissed. "I know," I said. "Want a bowl?" She ran out of the kitchen. She ran to the master bedroom and slammed the door. I heard her coughing. I heard her spraying perfume. But perfume doesn't fight chitterlings. Nothing fights chitterlings. The smell would seep under the door. It would get into her clothes. It would get into her pores. She would smell like boiled hog gut for a week. I sat there all night. I stirred the pot every hour. The smell got stronger. It got richer. It was the smell of victory. At 3 a.m, I heard her door open. She ran to the bathroom and vomited. Then she ran back to the room. She couldn't sleep. The smell was in her nose. The cold was in her bones. The silence of the Wi-Fi was in her head. I slept in the chair. I woke up at dawn. The pot was still simmering. The water level had dropped, concentrating the aroma into a thick sludge. Rebecca came out at 7. She was wearing sunglasses. She had a scarf wrapped around her face. She was carrying a suitcase. "I'm going to my mother's," she announced. "I can't stay here. This place is a biohazard." "I thought you lived here," I said. "I thought you were the legal guardian." "I am taking Leo," she said. "Get him ready." "Leo is gone," I lied. "Strickland picked him up for school an hour ago." She stomped her foot. "You can't do that." "I just did," I said. She looked at the door. She looked at me. "I will be back," she threatened. "I will be back when you air this dump out, and I am bringing the police to make you turn the water back on." "Bring them," I said. "I will offer them a bowl." She ran out the door. She didn't look back. She got into her car and peeled away. I waited until she was gone. I turned off the stove. I took the pot to the backyard and dumped it in the compost heap for the raccoons. I walked through the house. I opened the windows to let the November wind blow through. It was cold, but it was clean. I had won the battle. I had driven her out without raising a hand. But I knew the war wasn't over. She was desperate. She needed money. And desperate people do desperate things. She would try something else. She would try something big. I picked up the iPad. I checked Darnell's messages. Nothing new. But then I checked Rebecca's social media. She had posted a status update an hour ago. "Heartbroken. My father-in-law has lost his mind. He is living in filth. We need help to save him and get justice for my husband. Organizing a fundraiser. Details soon." A fundraiser. She was going to use my name, my house, and my tragedy to grift money from strangers. She was going to stand on a stage and play the victim. I smiled. "Go ahead, Rebecca," I thought. "Build your stage. Gather your audience. Because when you turn on the spotlight, I will be the one holding the microphone. And I will make sure the whole world hears the song you really sing." 3 days after Rebecca fled my house, she decided to host a party. She called it a fundraiser. She rented the community hall at the First Baptist Church down on Jefferson Avenue. She put up flyers in the grocery store and posted all over social media. The flyer said, "Justice for Darnell." It said, "Help a family destroyed by corruption." It asked for donations to pay for legal fees and to support a grandfather suffering from dementia. She was using my name and my alleged sickness to steal money from good church-going people. She was charging $50 a plate for cold spaghetti and warm soda. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my hotel suite. I looked at the reflection. For 40 years, Detroit had seen Walter Robinson, the mechanic. They saw the grease under the fingernails. They saw the blue coveralls with the name patch stitched on the pocket. They saw the man who walked with a stoop and drove a rusted truck. Tonight they were going to meet Mr. Robinson, the chairman. I put on a white dress shirt made of Egyptian cotton. I buttoned it all the way to the top. I tied a silk tie in a perfect Windsor knot. I stepped into trousers that were cut by a tailor in Milan 10 years ago when I was there inspecting shipping containers. I slipped on the jacket. It was a Brioni. It cost $6,000. And it fit me like a second skin. It hid the slope of my shoulders. It made me look broad, powerful. I sat on the edge of the bed and put on my shoes. They were handcrafted leather wingtips, polished to a mirror shine. I didn't take my cane. I didn't need it. I stood up straight. I checked my watch. It was a Patek Philippe I usually kept in a safety deposit box. It was heavy on my wrist. It ticked with the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. I picked up a leather portfolio. Inside was a USB drive and a stack of printed documents. I went downstairs. The valet brought my rental car around. It was a black Mercedes S-Class. I usually drove the Ford to keep up appearances, but tonight appearances were changing. I drove to the church. The parking lot was full. Rebecca had done a good job. She had played the victim card perfectly. People love a tragedy, especially when they can buy a ticket to watch it. I parked in the front row. I stepped out. The air was cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt the heat of the fire in my belly. I walked to the double doors of the community hall. I could hear music inside. Sad gospel music, designed to loosen purse strings. I pushed the doors open. The hall was crowded. There were round tables covered in cheap plastic tablecloths. There were balloons that were already starting to deflate. At the front of the room was a stage with a microphone and a large projection screen showing a slideshow of Darnell. Darnell at graduation. Darnell at his wedding. Darnell smiling. It was a memorial for a man who wasn't dead, just incarcerated. Rebecca was on stage. She was wearing a black dress that was modest and high-necked. She held a tissue in her hand. She was speaking into the microphone. Her voice was trembling. "We don't know what to do," she said. "My husband is innocent. He was framed by a corrupt system. And his father, my poor father-in-law, he has lost his mind. He is living in filth. He refuses help. We need money to get him into a facility where he can be safe. We need money to fight for Darnell. Please open your hearts." The crowd murmured sympathetically. I saw old Mrs. Higgins from down the street reaching for her checkbook. I saw the pastor nodding his head solemnly. I started walking down the center aisle. My shoes clicked on the linoleum floor. It was a sharp, authoritative sound. Click, click, click. Heads started to turn. People looked at the man in the expensive suit. They didn't recognize me at first. They looked at the clothes. They looked at the way I walked. They thought I was a politician or a visiting dignitary. Then Mrs. Higgins squinted. Her mouth dropped open. "Walter," she whispered. The whisper traveled like a wave. "Walter. Is that Walter? Look at him." Rebecca looked up from her tissue. She saw me. Her eyes went wide. She stepped back from the microphone. The feedback squealed. She didn't see the confused old man she had tormented. She saw a man who looked like he owned the bank that held her mortgage. I didn't stop walking until I reached the stairs to the stage. I walked up them. I stood next to her. She smelled of fear and cheap wine. "What are you doing here?" she hissed away from the mic. "Get out! You are ruining everything." I looked at her. I looked at the crowd. There were about 200 people, neighbors, friends, strangers. I reached out and took the microphone from her hand. She was too shocked to resist. "Good evening, everyone," I said. My voice was deep and clear. I didn't stutter. I didn't shake. The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop. "My name is Walter Robinson. I am the poor, senile father you have been hearing so much about." A gasp went through the room. Rebecca tried to grab the mic back. "He is having an episode," she shouted to the crowd. "He doesn't know where he is. Someone help him." I turned to her. I fixed her with a stare that stopped her cold. "Sit down, Rebecca," I said. My voice boomed through the speakers. "Sit down before you embarrass yourself further." She froze. She looked at the crowd. She saw their confusion. She saw their curiosity. She sat down on a folding chair behind me. I turned back to the audience. "I am here to make a donation," I said. "I heard my daughter-in-law is in financial distress. I heard she needs money for legal fees. I heard she is worried about my health." I opened my leather portfolio. I pulled out a piece of paper. "I want to help," I said. "But before you give your hard-earned money, I think you should know where it is going." I walked over to the laptop controlling the projector. The teenage boy running it looked at me with wide eyes. "Plug this in, son," I said, handing him the USB drive. He did it. He didn't ask questions. He was terrified. The slideshow of Darnell disappeared. A new image appeared on the massive screen behind me. It was a credit card statement. It was blown up so everyone in the back row could read it. It was highlighted in yellow. "This is a statement from my personal credit card," I said. "The one Rebecca stole from my wallet 3 weeks ago. As you can see, there is a charge here for $4,000 at the Hermes boutique in Troy. And here is another for $2,000 at a spa. And here is a charge for a first-class ticket to Miami." The crowd started to whisper. People were pointing at the screen. Rebecca jumped up. "That is fake," she screamed. "He forged it. He is lying." I ignored her. "Next slide, son," I said. The image changed. It was a receipt from a printer shop for $50,000 worth of fake medical documents. "And this," I said, "is what my son paid to a forger to create a fake diagnosis of dementia for me so they could sell my house while I was still sleeping in it." The whispers turned into angry muttering. The pastor stood up looking furious. "Lies!" Rebecca shrieked. She ran toward me. She tried to claw at the laptop. I caught her wrist. I didn't squeeze hard, but I held her firm. "We are not done, Rebecca," I said. "One more slide." The screen flickered. A video started playing. It was black and white footage from the camera I had hidden in my living room bookshelf. It was time-stamped 3 days ago. The day Darnell was arraigned. The day he was locked up. The video showed Rebecca. She was sitting on my sofa. She was not crying. She was not grieving. She was drinking wine from the bottle. And she was not alone. Sitting next to her was a man. It wasn't Darnell. It was Dave from next door. My neighbor. A married man with 3 kids. The audio played over the speakers. "He is such an idiot," Rebecca said on the video, laughing. "Darnell is actually going to prison. I can't believe it. I am finally free of him." Dave laughed too. "So what happens to the money?" "We sell the old man's house," she said. "We put him in a home. And then you and I take a trip. I deserve a vacation after dealing with this family." Then on the screen, 20 feet tall, Rebecca leaned over and kissed Dave. It was not a friendly kiss. It was passionate. It was the kiss of a woman who didn't care that her husband was sleeping on a concrete slab. The crowd erupted. "Oh my Lord," someone shouted. Scandalous, an older woman yelled. Dave's wife, who was sitting in the 3rd row, stood up and screamed. She threw her purse at the stage. Rebecca stared at the screen. Her face went white. She looked like a statue made of ash. She pulled her wrist from my grip. She looked at the crowd. She saw the judgment. She saw the disgust. "Turn it off," she screamed. "Turn it off." I signaled the boy. He cut the feed. The screen went black. I looked at Rebecca. She was trembling. "You wanted a fundraiser," I said into the microphone. "You wanted attention. You got it." She looked at me with hate so pure it was almost impressive. "I will kill you," she whispered. "You won't get the chance," I said. The doors at the back of the hall burst open. Strickland walked in. Behind him were 4 uniformed police officers and 2 detectives in suits. Rebecca looked for an exit. There was no exit. The stage was a trap. The officers walked down the aisle. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. They walked up the stairs to the stage. Rebecca Robinson, one of the detectives, said, "No," she whimpered. "No, this is a mistake. You are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit forgery." They grabbed her arms. They pulled her hands behind her back. I heard the click of the handcuffs. It was the same sound I had heard when they took Darnell, the sound of consequences arriving. "I didn't do it," she screamed as they dragged her down the stairs. "He set me up. He is crazy. He is rich. He has money hidden. Listen to me." Nobody listened. The crowd was booing her. The pastor was shaking his head. Dave's wife was trying to claw at her as she passed. I stood on the stage alone. I watched them take her away. Strickland walked up the stairs. He stood next to me. He looked at the crowd. "Show is over, folks," he said. "Go home. Check your bank accounts. And maybe say a prayer for Mr. Robinson here. He just cleaned up the neighborhood." I walked down the stairs. People reached out to touch my arm. They apologized. They said they didn't know. They said they were sorry. I nodded. I accepted their words. But I didn't stop. I walked out of the hall. I walked into the night air. I loosened my tie. I took a deep breath. It was done. The public execution was complete. Rebecca was gone. Darnell was gone. My name was cleared. But I wasn't happy. Victory doesn't taste like champagne. It tastes like ash and cold coffee. It tastes like the end of a bloodline. Strickland walked beside me to the car. "You did good, Walter," he said. "That was biblical." I opened the door of the Mercedes. "It had to be done, Strick," I said. "What now?" he asked. Now, I said, getting into the car, "I have to go visit my son. I have to tell him who his father really is." "You think he is ready to hear it?" Strickland asked. "I don't care if he is ready," I said. "He needs to know what he threw away." I started the engine. The Mercedes purred. I drove away from the church. I drove away from the wreckage of my family. I drove toward the prison. Tomorrow, I would reveal the secret. Tomorrow, I would show Darnell the empire he lost. But tonight, I was going to go back to my hotel. I was going to order a steak. And I was going to sleep without listening for footsteps in the hallway, because the wolves were caged. And the shepherd was finally resting. The visiting room at the Wayne County Correctional Facility smelled of floor wax and stale despair. I walked in wearing my $6,000 Brioni suit. The guards looked at me differently now. Last week I was an old mechanic in a stained jacket. Today I looked like the man who signed their paychecks. I sat down on the metal stool on my side of the plexiglass. I placed my hands on the counter. My Patek Philippe watch gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. I waited. The door on the other side buzzed open. Darnell shuffled in. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung off his frame like a loose skin. He had lost 10 pounds in a week. His head was shaved. There was a purple bruise blooming on his cheekbone and his lip was split. He looked like a man who had discovered that he was not the predator he thought he was. He was prey. He sat down. He didn't look at me at first. He looked at the cuffs on his wrists. Then he looked up. His eyes widened. He blinked. He stared at my suit. He stared at the silk tie. He stared at the gold watch on my wrist. "Pop," he whispered. "What is this? Did you win the lottery? Is that where you got the money for the lawyer?" I looked at him. I didn't smile. "No, Darnell. I didn't win the lottery. I don't gamble. Gambling is for fools who think luck is a strategy." He leaned forward. The chains rattled. "Then you sold the house. You sold it to get me out. When am I leaving? Is Strickland processing the paperwork?" I leaned forward too. My reflection superimposed over his face in the glass. "I am not here to get you out, Darnell. I am here to tell you the truth." He looked confused. "The truth? What truth?" "The truth about who you tried to bury," I said. He flinched. He looked away. "Pop, I told you. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was desperate. Big T was going to kill me. So you decided to kill me instead?" I asked. "No," he said quickly. "No. Just jail. I just needed you to take the fall for the drugs." "Why me?" "Darnell," I asked. "Why your own father? Why not a stranger? Why not leave it in a dumpster?" He looked down at his hands. "Because you were there," he mumbled. I waited. I let the silence stretch. "Tell me the real reason, son. Look me in the eye and tell me why you thought I was disposable." He looked up. His eyes were wet. There was anger there, too, a deep, resentful anger. Full. "Because you are nothing, Pop," he spat. The words came out fast, like vomit. "You are just a mechanic. You sit in that house all day. You drink cheap beer. You fix old trucks. You have no life. You have no future. You are just waiting to die. I have a life. I have potential. I could have been something. It didn't matter if you went to prison. You are old. It wouldn't cost you anything. But it cost me everything." I listened to him. I let the words hit me. They didn't hurt. They just confirmed what I already knew. He didn't see me. He saw a caricature. "Is that what you think?" I asked. "You think I am just a mechanic?" "Yes," he said. "That is all you ever were. Grease and oil and small change. You embarrassed me, Pop. My friends have fathers who are doctors, lawyers, business owners. You change oil." I nodded slowly. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a business card. It was thick cream-colored cardstock with embossed black lettering. I pressed it against the glass. "Read it," I said. He squinted. "Robinson Logistics Holdings," he read. "Walter Robinson, Chairman and CEO." He looked at me. He laughed. A nervous, broken laugh. "What is this? Did you print this at the library? Is this your dream, Pop?" "No, Darnell," I said. "This is my reality." I put the card away. I folded my hands. You applied for a sales job at Robinson Logistics 3 times in the last 5 years, I said. He stopped laughing. How do you know that? I know because I rejected your application 3 times, I said. His mouth dropped open. What? I own it, Darnell. I own Robinson Logistics. I built it 30 years ago. I started with 1 truck, the one you tried to put drugs in. I fixed it myself. I drove it myself. Then I bought another, and another. Now I have a fleet of 45 semi-trucks moving freight across the Midwest. He shook his head. No, that is impossible. You live in a shack, you drive a rust bucket. I live in a home, I said. A home I paid for in cash in 1985. I drive a truck because I like to remind myself where I came from. I don't wear suits because I don't need to impress people I don't like. But the company, that is mine. I watched the gears turn in his head. He was trying to process it. He was trying to rewrite his entire history with me. The depot on 8 Mile, I continued. The one with the blue fence. The one you drive past every day to get to your condo. I own that too. I own the land. I own the warehouses. The Italians rent it from me. Big T rents space from me. Big T, he whispered. Yes, I said. That is why your debt is frozen. That is why Kofi came to my house and painted my garage instead of burning it down. Because I control their logistics. I control their flow. I am the landlord, Darnell. I've always been the landlord. He looked sick. He looked like he was going to throw up. You have money, he croaked. I nodded. My personal net worth is approximately $18 million. Liquid. Not counting the real estate portfolio or the business equity. 18 million. He said the number like it was a prayer. $18 million. And he had tried to frame me for 50,000. He had tried to burn me down for a debt that I could have paid with the change in my pocket. Why, he screamed. He slammed his fists against the glass. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me struggle? Why did you let me drown in debt? Because I wanted you to learn, I shouted back. My voice boomed in the small room. The guard looked over but didn't move. I wanted you to build your own life. I wanted you to respect the dollar. I gave you an education. I paid for your college. I gave you every opportunity to be a man. And what did you do? You leased cars you couldn't afford. You bought watches that were fake. You gambled. You took shortcuts. If I had given you the money, you would have snorted it or gambled it away in a month. You trapped me, he cried. You tested me and you trapped me. I tested you, I agreed. And you failed. You failed every single time. And the final failure was when you decided my life was worth less than your freedom. He slumped back in his chair. He put his head in his hands. So you are rich, he mumbled. You are rich and I am in here. Yes, I said. So get me out, he said. He looked up. His eyes were wild, hopeful. Pay the bail. Hire the best lawyers. Buy the judge. You can do it. You have $18 million. Get me out, Pop. I learned my lesson. I swear. I will work for you. I will drive trucks. Just get me out. I looked at him. I looked at the man who ordered a hit on his own father. No, I said. What? No, I repeated. I am not spending a dime on your defense. I am not paying your bail. You are going to stay in here. You are going to go to trial, and you are going to prison. You can't do that, he screamed. I am your son. You ceased to be my son when you put fentanyl in my truck, I said. You ceased to be my son when you texted Big T to burn my house down with me inside. He froze. You know about that. I know everything, Darnell. I have your iPad. I saw the messages. Do what you have to do. That is what you wrote. Make it look like an accident. He started to cry. Ugly, sobbing tears. I didn't mean it. I was scared. You meant it, I said. And that is why I am leaving you here. Because a man who would burn his father is not a man I want on the street. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. There is one more thing, I said. He looked up. His face was a mask of snot and tears. The house, I said. The one you wanted to sell so bad. The one you thought was worth $400,000. Yeah, he sniffed. I had it appraised last year, I said. Not for the house, for the land. The city rezoned the block Darnell. It is commercial now. They want to build a shopping center. That lot. The dirt you grew up on. It is worth $5 million. He stopped crying. His jaw dropped. $5 million, he whispered. $5 million, I said. And you tried to kill me to sell it for 50 cents on the dollar to a loan shark. That is how stupid you are, Darnell. That is how blind you are. You were sitting on a gold mine and you tried to sell it for scrap. I turned to the door. Pop, wait, he screamed. Wait. Don't leave me. I looked back at him one last time. I already left you, Darnell, I said. I left you the day you decided I was disposable. Enjoy the cage, son. You built it yourself. I tapped on the door. The guard opened it. I walked out. I heard Darnell screaming my name. I heard him banging on the glass. I didn't look back. I walked down the hallway. My shoes clicked on the linoleum. I adjusted my cuffs. I walked out into the parking lot. The sun was setting. The sky was purple and orange. I got into my Mercedes. I checked my phone. I had a message from Strickland. Rebecca had been denied bail. She was in the county lockup. I started the engine. I felt light. I felt heavy. I felt like a man who had just cut off a gangrenous limb to save the body. It hurt. But I was going to live. I drove toward the city. I had a meeting with a realtor. It was time to sell the house. It was time to sell the land. $5 million. I was going to use it to buy a farm, a big one, far away from here, and I was going to take Leo, and we were going to build something real, something that couldn't be burned down. But first I was going to stop for a steak, rare, with a glass of the most expensive whiskey in the house, because the mechanic was dead. Long live the chairman. The gavel hit the wood block with a sound like a gunshot that ended a war. 12 years. The judge did not hesitate. She did not look at Darnell with pity. She looked at him with the fatigue of a woman who had seen too many men throw their lives away for easy money. 12 years in federal prison for possession with intent to distribute and conspiracy to commit fraud. He would be eligible for parole in 10 if he behaved. 10 years. He would be 42 years old when he walked out. He would be a middle-aged man with nothing to show for his life but a criminal record and a debt that would never truly go away. Darnell did not scream this time. He did not cry. He just slumped in his chair. The orange jumpsuit seemed to swallow him whole. He looked over his shoulder at me one last time. I was sitting in the back row next to Strickland. I was wearing my suit. I looked him in the eye. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just nodded once. It was a goodbye. It was a closing of the book. He turned away. He let the bailiffs pull him up. He let them shackle his hands to his waist. He walked out the side door with the shuffle of a man who had forgotten how to walk tall. Rebecca was next. Her trial had been shorter. Her defense was weaker. She tried to paint herself as a victim of Darnell's coercion, but the recordings I played at the fundraiser had destroyed that narrative. The jury had heard her voice. They had heard her greed. They had heard her plotting to put me in a state home so she could take a vacation. 5 years, that was the sentence. 5 years for identity theft, fraud, and elder abuse. When they read her sentence, she looked at the gallery. She was looking for someone to save her. She looked for her parents, but they weren't there. They had stopped answering her calls after the news broke about the fake medical records. They were protecting their own reputation in the country club. She looked at Dave the neighbor, but Dave was back with his wife trying to salvage his marriage. She was alone, truly alone. The custody hearing for Leo had been the final nail in her coffin. It happened a week before the sentencing. Strickland destroyed her. He presented the evidence of her neglect. He presented the testimony of Leo's teachers who said she never came to parent-teacher conferences. He played the audio of her calling Leo baggage. The judge granted me full permanent custody without hesitation. Rebecca lost her freedom, and she lost the only leverage she had left. As they led her away, she didn't look at me. She looked at the floor. She looked at her shoes, which were no longer designer heels, but cheap prison-issue slip-ons. She was a woman who defined herself by what she owned, and now she owned nothing. But the punishment didn't end with the judge. The legal system handles the crime against society. I had to handle the crime against the family, and I had to handle the debt. Strickland and I walked out of the courthouse into the gray Detroit afternoon. It was raining, a cold drizzle that washed the grit off the sidewalks. "He is going to Lewisburg," Strickland said, lighting a cigarette under the awning. "It is a tough facility, Walter. Minimum security isn't an option with the amount of meth involved." "I know," I said. Big T reached out, Strickland said quietly. "He knows Darnell is going inside. He knows he can't collect cash from an inmate earning 12 cents an hour." I nodded. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a burner phone. I had bought it just for this conversation. I dialed the number with the scorpion picture. It rang once. "Yeah," a deep voice answered. "This is Robinson," I said. "Mr. Robinson," the voice said. It was respectful. The streets knew who I was now. They knew I was the landlord. "I heard your boy got 12 years. That is a long time to owe money. The debt stands," I said. "But the terms have changed. I am listening." "Darnell is yours," I said. "Not to kill, not to maim. He is yours to work. You have people inside Lewisburg. I know you do." "We run the yard," the voice said. "Good. Darnell needs a job. He needs to understand the value of labor. I want him working. Laundry, kitchen, cleaning the showers. Whatever is the hardest, whatever is the dirtiest, that is his job. Every hour he works, you deduct $10 from the principal." The voice on the other end chuckled. $10 an hour. It will take him a lifetime to pay off 150 grand. "Then he better get started," I said. "And listen to me. He stays safe. No shanks, no beatings. He eats, he sleeps, and he works. If he gets hurt, if he dies, the debt is canceled, and I close the depot." "Do we understand each other?" "We understand, Mr. Robinson," the voice said. "He will be the hardest working man in federal custody. We will make sure of it." I hung up. I threw the burner phone into the trash can. It was a sentence within a sentence. Darnell wanted to be a big shot. He wanted easy money. Now he was going to spend the next decade scrubbing floors for a drug dealer to pay for a mistake he tried to pin on his father. He would wake up every day knowing he was a servant. He would go to sleep every night knowing his father could have written a check and freed him but chose not to. That was the real punishment, the knowledge of what could have been. 2 weeks later, the final act played out. The police auction. They were selling off the seized assets to pay restitution to the victims of Darnell's fraud and to pay court costs. I didn't have to go. Strickland told me to stay home, but I needed to see it. I needed to see the physical erasure of their lies. The auction was held in a drafty warehouse near the river. It smelled of dust and exhaust. There were rows of cars, rows of jewelry, rows of electronics. I stood in the back leaning on my cane. I wasn't using it for support anymore, but I liked the feel of the wood in my hand. "Lot 42, the auctioneer shouted. A silver Lexus LS, low mileage, good condition. I watched as people bid on Darnell's car, the car he loved more than his son. The car he leased to look rich while he was stealing from my retirement fund. It sold for a fraction of its value to a used car dealer from Ohio. He was going to strip it for parts. Darnell's identity was being sold for scrap metal. Next came Rebecca's things, the designer bags, the jewelry. Most of it was fake, I learned. She had bought knockoffs and claimed they were real. But the few real things, the Hermes bag she bought with my credit card, the diamond earrings she bought with the loan shark money, they went on the block. I watched a young woman buy the bag. She looked happy. She got a deal. She didn't know the misery that bag represented. She didn't know it was bought with betrayal. Strickland stood next to me. "You want to bid on anything, Walter?" he asked. "Maybe get your money back." I shook my head. "I don't want any of it. It is cursed." We watched until the end. We watched until the pallets were empty. Darnell and Rebecca were gone. Their possessions were scattered to the wind. Their home was empty. Their names were mud. They had tried to take everything from me. They had tried to take my home, my money, my mind, my life. And in the end, they lost everything. I walked out of the warehouse. The sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple. I felt lighter. The anger that had fueled me for weeks was fading, leaving behind a quiet calm. I had done what I had to do. I had protected myself. I had protected Leo. I got into my Ford truck. It started with a roar. I patted the dashboard right above where Darnell had taped that package. "We made it, old girl," I whispered. I drove toward the school. It was time to pick up Leo. He was staying with me now. We were going to look at the farm this weekend. 100 acres north of the city. Trees, a lake, a big workshop where I could teach him how to fix engines. I wasn't just a mechanic anymore. I wasn't just a victim. I was the patriarch. And I had a new legacy to build. One that wasn't built on lies. One that was built on iron and earth and truth. Darnell and Rebecca were the past. Leo was the future, and I was the bridge that would get him there safely. The sun was high when I stood on the sidewalk and looked at the bungalow on Michigan Avenue for the last time. The for sale sign was already gone. The developers didn't waste time. They paid $5.2 million for the dirt. They were going to bulldoze my history. They were going to knock down the walls where I raised a son who tried to kill me. They were going to tear up the floorboards where Rebecca walked in her heels. Good. Let them take it. I didn't see a home anymore. I saw a crime scene. I saw a cage I had finally unlocked. I threw the last box into the back of the new truck. It was a heavy-duty pickup, black with a towing package that could pull a house. Roscoe was already in the passenger seat, his head sticking out the window, sniffing the air. He smelled change. He smelled freedom. Leo was in the back seat. He had his iPad, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at me. "Are we coming back, Grandpa?" he asked. "No, son," I said. "We are never coming back." I climbed into the driver's seat. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I put the truck in gear and drove away. I left the ghosts behind. I left the sirens and the concrete and the betrayal. We drove north. The city faded into suburbs and the suburbs faded into trees. The air changed. It stopped smelling like exhaust and started smelling like pine and wet earth. We arrived at the gate 2 hours later. It was 100 acres of rolling green. There was a lake that reflected the sky. There was a farmhouse with a wraparound porch that needed painting. There was a massive barn that I was going to turn into the best mechanic shop in the county. "This is ours?" Leo asked. His eyes were wide. "It is ours," I said. "All of it. As far as you can see." We settled in. The first few weeks were quiet. We learned the rhythm of the land. I woke up with the sun, not because I had to work, but because I wanted to see the light hit the trees. Leo started school in the local district. He made friends who didn't care about designer clothes or leased cars. He started sleeping through the night without nightmares. Strickland came up on Sundays. We sat on the porch and drank expensive whiskey and watched the sun go down. We didn't talk much about Darnell. There was nothing to say. He was scrubbing floors in Lewisburg. He was paying his debt 1 hour at a time. I sent money to his commissary account once a month. Just enough for soap and toothpaste. I wasn't cruel. I just wasn't an enabler anymore. One Saturday morning, I took Leo into the barn. I had the old Ford F-150 up on the blocks. It was the truck Darnell had tried to use to frame me. It was rusted. The paint was peeling. The bumper was dented. Leo looked at it. "Why do we keep this, Grandpa?" he asked. "You have the new truck. You have the money. This one looks like junk." I handed him a wrench. "Come here, Leo," I said. I popped the hood. "Look inside," I said. He stood on a crate and looked into the engine bay. "What do you see?" "It is clean," he said. "It looks new." "That is a Coyote Vi-8 crate engine," I said. "I swapped it in 2 years ago. It has new headers, a new intake. This truck looks like junk on the outside, but inside it has 500 horsepower. It can outrun your daddy's Lexus. It can pull a semi. It is the strongest thing on the road." I wiped my hands on a rag. "This is the lesson, Leo. This is what you need to know. Your father and Rebecca, they were all paint. They were shiny. They were loud. They looked expensive. But underneath the hood, they were broken. They had no power. They had no heart. They broke down the first time they hit a hill. I tapped the rusted fender of the truck. But this, I said, this is character. It doesn't matter what people think when they see you coming. It doesn't matter if your jacket is old or your hands are dirty. What matters is the engine. What matters is what you can do when the weight is on your hitch. What matters is that when you turn the key, you start every single time." Leo nodded. He understood. He took the wrench. He started tightening a bolt on the alternator bracket. He had good hands, steady, strong. He was a Robinson, the real kind. I walked to the barn door and looked out at my land. I saw the wind moving through the tall grass. I saw the hawk circling in the blue sky. For 40 years, I thought I was building a legacy for my son. I thought the money was the legacy. I thought the business was the legacy. I was wrong. The money was just paper. The business was just trucks moving boxes. This was the legacy. This boy with grease on his nose. This peace. This ability to stand on my own ground and answer to no one. I am not rich because I have $18 million in the bank. I am not rich because I own a logistics company. I am not rich because I beat them. I took a deep breath of the clean country air. I am rich because I am free. And that is a wealth that no one can ever steal from me again. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Let me know in the comments if you would have forgiven Darnell or if you would have let him rot. Until next time, keep your engine running and your eyes open. The hardest truth I had to accept was that you cannot save someone who is determined to drown. For years I believed that my love and my silence were protecting my son, but they were only enabling his greed. I learned that true wealth isn't measured by the balance in your offshore accounts or the title on your business card. It is measured by your character and the peace you carry in your heart. Darnell chased the appearance of success and lost his freedom. I embraced the reality of hard work and found my legacy. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is let their child face the consequences of their own actions, even if it breaks your heart. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Let me know in the comments below. Did I do the right thing by leaving Darnell in prison? Or does a father owe his son a second chance? No matter what, I'll be reading your answers.